ask everyone to have their mics on mute, please. Go ahead, Maura.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay, Chair? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Alderman Keith Kerrigan, sorry.
Maura.
Thank you. Alderman Hilary McClintock.
Here, Maura.
Thanks, Hilary. Councillor Kieran Maguire. I'll come back. Councillor Philip McKinney.
Here, Maura. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Councillor Aileen Mellon.
Maura.
Thank you, Aileen. Councillor Sean Mooney. Yeah, thanks, Sean. I'll just go back, Chair. Just to call again. Councillor Kieran Maguire. No. Probably I'll just keep an eye out. It's just not coming up at the minute, Chair. So we'll come back to Kieran. Hopefully it'll get on. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. Members, item 3 on our agenda is the statement for remote meetings. And I'd like to remind everyone who is in remote attendance that this meeting will be broadcast live via Council's YouTube channel and will be available for viewing by the public and media. The broadcast will also be available for repeated viewing at a later date. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with Council protocol. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to request or to highlight a request to speak. By participating in this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. A copy of Council's privacy notice may be found on the Council website. Members, moving on now to declarations of members' interests. Members, is there any declarations of interest for the items on today's agenda? No. Members, if there's any interests arise as we go through the meeting, members, can you indicate to myself and the appropriate measures will be taken. Moving on now to Chairperson's business. Members, I was contacted prior to the meeting by Alderman McClintock to raise a matter under Chairperson's business, which I have accepted. So I'm going to pass over to Hilary now to raise an issue she had brought to my attention. Hilary.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come in under Chair's business. Chair, this is the first meeting of this council since the sad passing of His Royal Highness Prince Philip. Chair, today there is a family grieving the loss of a loved one, but there is also a nation grieving. And while I know that not all in this chamber may understand or share my sentiments, I would ask today that in a show of solidarity, we mark the passing of the Duke of Edinburgh by holding a 1-minute silence in this virtual chamber. Prince Philip was a remarkable man, a refugee from Greece who came the longest serving consort in our history, a plain speaking man who dedicated his life to service not only to his adopted country, but who gave up his career to be by the side of his beloved wife, Queen Elizabeth. His immense contribution to the life of many young people through the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme cannot be underestimated, nor his contribution to environmental issues and much, much more. But today, Chair, I simply ask today that as a mark of respect, we collectively hold a minute's silence to mark the passing of Prince Philip at the beginning of this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alderman McClintock. Members, I hope that you will all join with us as we hold a minute's silence as the request from Alderman McClintock. And just to remind members that the Mayor has opened a book of condolence, a virtual book of condolence to anyone who wishes to sign that. So,
Chair, could I...
Councillor Gallagher, I'm hoping that we could deal with this matter as it is. Is it on the same issue?
It is, yes.
Okay, go on ahead.
Chair, I'll be abstaining from the minute silence. And while I understand the personal loss of a family is having at this time, I think that when Hillary talks about a nation and mourning, that the Irish nation has seen the loss of many lives in this country due to the fact of those royals and all the establishment that they stand for. So I'm sorry to say I'll not be participating in any amount of silence on this matter.
Thank you. Members, as I'm going to proceed now with the minute silence. So, and I suppose there's, in terms of, it's entirely up to members if you wish to join with Alderman McClintock as and the rest of the committee as we do so. So, the minute silence commences now. Okay, members. Thank you. And members, I just want to note, Mario, I just want to note that Councillor Maguire's attendance. He joined the meeting as we were conducting that minute silence.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you.
Maura, I'm going to hand over to yourself. There's been a substantial amount of late information that's come in. I'm just going to hand over to yourself to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members, you will be aware there was considerable amount of information sent on Friday and today, and we were obviously sending that and compiling that as soon as we possibly could in order to update you. I think the most important thing to start with is that in all of that, in terms of item 2, we had a letter from the agent, Sam McKee, and he has indicated that this application item 2 will now be withdrawn from the planning system. So it's not just the committee, but withdrawn completely. So it's important to note now that that application has been withdrawn from the agenda. And therefore we don't need to consider the letter from the objector, Mr. Jim McDade, which would have been on your list. So in terms of item 1, we've received quite a bit of correspondence. We have received a letter from Matt Kennedy on the 1st of April and the 9th of April, and that's the agent. We've also had emails and photographs from the objector from the 8th of April, and also email and photographs from the objector on the 4th of March. We've also got emails and photographs in regard to the TPO inspection, and we've submitted that to members on the 4th of August and also on the 26th of March. We've also received a late item today from Babington Solicitors on behalf of the Clarence Avenue Community Group. Again, members, that would have been supplied to yourselves. I'm wondering, Chair, there was further correspondence on that as well from your end, or do you want me to proceed through all the late items first?
Through all the late items first, Maura.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair. So in regard to item 3, and that's the Greenway application in Culmore, we received further information from the applicant, and that's Dermot Gibbons, who works in the council, and the email and photographs are enclosed. A report from Sustrans also in terms of support. An email from objector, Mr. Thomas Bell, dated the 30th of March, and also photographs from Mr. Thomas Bell as well on the 30th of March. In regard to item 4, we've also received a substantial amount of revised information, drawings and layout from the agent, and a letter requesting that this information is considered. Therefore, as a late item, having looked at it with the officers, it's so considerable we won't be able to take this item today, Chair, as it's a revised drawings in my view, and we'll have to consult with various statutory bodies as well as with the objectors in regard to that. So I would be recommending we would have to again withdraw this from the schedule, Chair. Moving on then to item 5, and that's in regard to the wind turbine. We've had a letter of support from an MLA, Tom Buchanan, and we've also an email from the agent, Conor Foy, received on the 8th of April. So that's all the late items, Chair, and we'll obviously keep a note of that as we're moving along those items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maura. And as we approach each of those items, we'll take the appropriate length of time for members to familiarise yourselves with the information that's been provided. But as Maura had indicated, I had also received additional correspondence in relation to the first application in relation to the apartments in the Northland Road, and that came in the form of a request from a member of this committee. Alderman McClintock had emailed myself requesting that we have a deferral to allow the applicant to consider the information that they claim to have received at very short notice. So members, I am going to put it on over to the floor to hear members' views. Are members content that we allow for that deferral, or are members content that we proceed and take a decision on that today? I'm keen to get a steer from the committee on this one. Alderman McClintock.
For letting me in. I simply requested the deferment because I was concerned that that it was being suggested that there was not enough time over the Easter holiday period to prepare for this. And I'm aware, obviously, that the site meeting was a very considerable length of time ago. But considering that the applicant is suggesting that they didn't know about the tree report, and also that they didn't have time to prepare fully in the interest of transparency, that's why I was suggesting that maybe it would be best to have a deferment of 1 month only, just and hear this at next month's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I would concur with Alderman McClintock. I think we need to be reasonable to applicants and indeed objectors and supporters of all applications, and in light of some of the information that has come to us, even this committee relatively late, I think there does potentially need to be some degree of further consideration of it. And clearly the tree report, if the applicant hasn't had sight of it until very late in the day, then again, to be fair and transparent, I think it only reasonable to do so. So again, I would agree with that view.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Hilary. Members, I'm content that we do indeed take a deferral, but before we do that, I want to bring the head of planning in, because I know the head of planning has indicated some concerns around that direction of travel. Maura, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. I just want members to be aware that the normal practice is that we would let everyone see the reports, and in this case all the reports were loaded up, and the actual case officer did let the agent know about this on the 1st of April, that it was going to be actually presented today. So there's been considerable amount of time, in my view, in terms of the reasonableness of it. And the issue of the tree and the reason for refusal in regard to that has been an issue on the previous report and the previous discussions on this case. So it's just being mindful in terms of the normal procedures for deferral. It wouldn't be a normal, but obviously it's a matter for members. Thank you.
Thanks, Maura. Aileen, before I bring Aileen, I'm going to ask Councillor Boyle and Alderman McClintock, has the advice from the head of planning changed your recommended approach? No?
They're still like the deferral, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Hilary.
Chair, just to come in, Chair, on that, I think there's other additional information I think we also need to consider too, and it's contained within the late items, as I'm sure you're well aware yourself. And I think a bit of breathing space in a month probably wouldn't do any harm. So again, my view hasn't changed on it.
Okay, no, thanks, John. Aileen, Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I suppose I was just checking to see, I would be happy either way to go ahead today, and if the majority thought, and if it was an issue of transparency or to allow for that, that'd be no problem at all. I just want to raise a small concern around consistency then. There's quite often late information coming through, and 12 days to me doesn't seem like that would be late information to the applicant. And although transparency is very important, so is consistency. So if other applicants came to this committee with a recommendation that this application has, is that everybody's right then to say we want a bit more time to look over, or is it prolonging the work or kicking the can down the road in terms of this committee and our workload that we have? Whilst I've no problem coming back anytime for 2 days or whatever, it's around the consistency of all applicants. And I think just in terms of that, I would be in favour in progressing that. The Maura has outlined that has been 12 days ago, and for me, I don't feel that is in terms of inadequate for a length of time to consider a report. But again, I just want to raise any concerns around the consistency for all applicants. If the committee chooses a day to defer, it wouldn't be a big issue for me, but the issue of that consistency would be.
Thanks, Councillor Mellon, and I would have the same concerns around setting a precedent, but I just, and that's why I wanted to get a steer from the committee, but just to remind everyone that this request has come from a member of the committee, and this is why it was brought in front of everyone today. So it's a member of the committee that made the request for the deferral. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you for letting me in, Chair. I do believe that Hilary and John are quite correct. We do need transparency, but I also agree with Councillor Mellon there. Is there a set time which we would call adequate time laid down anywhere where you can try and say, look, I'm sorry, but you've had your time and that's it, or sort of, is it just whatever we say basically goes? Thank you.
Maura, do you want to pick up on that? Is there any time? Is there a required time period in terms of us informing the applicant of or sharing the report, the planning report, with the applicant in advance of the planning committee?
Yeah, the date that the applications are usually uploaded on the schedule for members, there's a time scale there in terms of all the planning applications. It's usually, within that or in and around that time period, Chair. They all go up together at the same time once the schedule's agreed and the schedule's sent to members. So it would go on the portal then. You know, on occasions maybe that has been late, but that was why I checked today when the actual this report went up on the schedule. But more than that, the officer showed me an email explaining that this was highlighted to the agent on that date to let them know to look out for it as well. So that's all. I'm just being aware that with all the other applications, you know, that be normal practice.
Members, I really am conscious of time, and I don't want to spend as much time discussing the deferral as we would discussing the application. But I'm going to bring Councillor Mooney in. But members, we've got to steer that members are content with the deferral. So I'm going to ask people to indicate if they're not happy with that. But Councillor Mooney, do you want to come on briefly?
Thank you, Chair. It was just on the points made there. I'm looking at the letter from Mr. Kennedy and stated the 9th April, but he says that the report wasn't on the planning portal. It's not available to the public, and a copy has only been provided yesterday to yourselves. So on the basis of transparency, consistency, and maybe even on the interest of justice, we have a sort of digression between the two parties here, between planners and the applicants. And if he says that he's only received it or only got sight of it on 8th of April, and today is the 12th, then there's two different sort of viewpoints. And I suppose, given the benefit to the applicant, he mightn't have an opportunity to get that report to us arboriculturist to get a rebuttal in. So I know what Councillor Mellon's saying and all the members are saying, but I think really it seems to be that what he's saying is he's only had 4 days of sight of it. So maybe a short adjournment the next month might be useful to facilitate this year. That's all I'm happy to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Mooney. So members, I think we've got a...
Sorry, Chair, could I clarify an important point? I was referring to the case officer's report, not what the agent is referring to as the tree information emails from the tree officer, which he asked for later, which he did receive a few days ago, which are only a few pages long, just for information. That's probably where there's just the accuracy of that, just to be clear on it. Thanks.
And just for clarity, I think the request for a deferral from Alderman McClintock was based on the inadequate amount of time to consider the tree report. So members, we've got a clear direction. So that application number 1 will be deferred, and I note that we do have an objector, Barbara Kern, who have requested speaking rights. I just want to offer my apologies to Barbara, because we didn't foresee this being deferred, and if we had of, we would have given you advance notice. But I trust that when the request for a deferral was specific in terms of the time frame, so this will be coming back next month, and I would hope that Barbara's request for speaking rights will be extended to next month's committee meeting. So I just want to offer my apologies to Barbara and for Mr. Kennedy, who has also requested speaking rights in respect to this. Members, I'm going to move on now to the running order. And the running order, taking into consideration the other points that Maura had made, that item number 2 has been withdrawn from the system altogether, and that item number 4 has been withdrawn from today's schedule, and then from the committee's decision to defer item number 1. So the running order for today is item number 3, followed by item 5, and then 6 and 7 will be presented together, and 8 and 9 will be presented together. So that's our running order for today's meeting, members. And the last item of Chairperson's business is just to let members know that item number 8 on today's schedule, which refers to the review of legislation, the planning legislation, it's down for open for information, members, that's actually open for decision. So when we reach that point into today's meeting, we will need to take a decision in relation to council's response to that review of the implementation of the Planning Act. So I'm going to move. So members, there's the first application is LA 11 2018 119, and it's a full application that was presented last month in relation to the Greenway. Members, there's been late information in respect to that, so I'm going to ask members to take 5 minutes just to familiarise yourselves with the late information, and we'll be back online in 5 minutes' time. The application will be presented. Members, are you content to proceed, or do you need more time? If there's no one requesting more time, I'm going to hand over to Rosie, and Rosie's going to take us through the application.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 3 is the application for the Greenway. It's for a proposed shared pedestrian and cycleway, and the application was before members in March, and deferred for a site visit which took place on the 8th of April. It was the site visit was attended by Councillor Mooney, Councillor Dobbins, Councillor McKinney, Councillor Jackson and Alderman McClintock. And the application is before members today because it's a council application, and the recommendation is to approve. So the Greenway route runs from Bay Park in the city to Cannings Lane on the border with County Donegal, and it's part of a wider Greenway network to connect the district with Donegal. So this slide shows the extent of the route, commencing in Bay Park, proceeding along Culmore Road, Culmore Point Road, Arden Road to Hollybush Primary School, Coney Road to the border with Cannings Lane before crossing the county stream into Muff. So this is where the route commences in Bay Park, proceeding along Madams Bank Road under the Foyle Bridge and then through Boom Hall. It then exits onto the Culmore Road where the traffic lights are shown and crosses onto Culmore Road, which is shown at the beginning here on the lower left image at Heathfield. Continues then along Culmore Road. This is past Drummond Park, Larkham Drive, out Culmore Road past Sea House. And at this point, the Greenway route, if you look at the map there, proceeds behind the trees and back along Culmore Road. It then defers down Springfield Road and takes a new route that links into the grounds of Thornhill College before returning to the Culmore Road at this point onto the footpath here, which has recently been widened under a scheme undertaken by DFI Roads. The route proceeds out the Culmore Road past Balnagard Crescent, the shops here in Culmore Village. It turns down onto Culmore Point Road at the Magnet Bar and proceeds along Culmore Point Road. This section of the route is on Arden Road, where it terminates at Hollybush Primary School, and it'll be the intention to cross where the raised part of the road is shown here and proceed with a new footpath up the right-hand side of the road. The route continues out Coney Road, where shown here in the lower image, this is where the route will run, and it runs as far, a new route is actually going to be laid along Coney Road as far as the Culmore Point Country Park, or Culmore Country Park, where it terminates at this point, and proceeds along Coney Road, but there'll be no widening works proposed under the current application. The Greenway route then terminates at Cannings Lane over County Stream, where this existing bridge will be removed and a new bridge will be provided. So you'll be aware from the report that there were a number of objections or representations received to the proposed route. This is the section of the route shown at Drummond Park, where the resident who was objecting queried why there were two gaps in the hedge, two 20-metre gaps in approximately this location and here. And following negotiation with council, a completed hedge, or these gaps were filled in with new proposed hedging, so there'll be a continuous hedge along what is shown here as the grass verge and the road. So at that point then the objector withdrew his objection. There was concern raised from residents of these dwellings along Culmore Road that there'll be a requirement to remove the hedging that's shown here, and what will happen then is that the Greenway route will be provided in along the Drummond or the Griffith Park Road, and here this hedging will be removed and replaced further out along the footpath at this point. So the concerns raised were that this would impact on privacy and safety, and the residents queried why, as at Drummond Park, the hedgerow and trees couldn't remain, and the path have a fence to separate it from the Culmore Road. So, as I say, the provision of the Greenway here requires removal of this hedging, and the agent team, the applicant team, have advised that the reason that we must take out this hedging is to actually provide a wide enough route. Because of the gradients that are on here, it won't be easy to keep the hedge and provide a new hedge along the road with Griffith Park. So regarding the impact on privacy and safety, while the provision of the Greenway, it will bring pedestrians and cyclists closer to these dwellings, they'd still remain separated from the front of these residents by the footpath and the existing road. So officers consider the privacy and safety won't be unduly impacted. The residents also raise the issues that this existing hedge was paid for and planted by them and has been there for about 25 years. It provides habitat for wildlife and it reduces noise pollution. So in respect of wildlife, NIEA Natural Heritage Division note that where it's necessary to remove any hedging, this will be carried out outside the bird breeding season, and they're satisfied that the impact will be minimal. There will be replanting undertaken with native species trees. So NIEA were satisfied with this arrangement for all points actually along the route. In terms of noise or pollution and reduction in noise, as I say, there will be new planting of hedges and trees, and the applicant advises that the 5 trees that are in existence along this section of the route will be replaced with 8 new trees and hedging. So the residents further query why the standard of tree to be replanted in this location has changed from 9 heavy standard trees as indicated in the initial plans to 9 standard trees. But the applicant has advised that in consultation with DFI Roads, the standard of tree had to be amended to ensure visibility at the junction of Colby Avenue onto Culmore Road was not negatively impacted. We also received representation from Brook Hall Estates, and their concern was that this section of the route, there's an intention, or the requirement, sorry, to widen the existing footpath to 3 metres, and that will result in a narrowing of the carriageway from 8 metres to 6.7 metres. So the objectors concerned that the narrowing of the road opposite the entrance to Brook Hall Estates, which is shown here, combined with the restricted clearance distance between the gates, may hamper access by large farm vehicles, trailers towing boats used by foil search and rescue and fire engines, and will result in a road safety issue. So in response to these concerns, the applicant advised that auto tracking drawings showed successful turning manoeuvres at present and with the Greenway in place for car and boat trailers and tractors and trailers. Auto tracking also showed that rigid vehicles and articulated vehicles can't successfully make the turn at present, and that the Greenway proposals don't make the current situation any worse. There was a road safety audit carried out, and the applicant advises that the audit has been carried out and did not identify any issues at this location. At Springfield Road then, we proceed down Springfield Road, but there's no road widening works proposed at this location. So the objector has, what will happen is when we come to the junction here with where Culmore Road meets Springfield Road, there will be a cyclist dismount sign erected. There won't be any new lighting proposed along this section of the road, as the agent advised that that can be provided to DFI Road standards. But there will be new lighting proposed along this new section of the route, which links from Springfield Road through into Thornhill College and back onto the Culmore Road. So in respect of this particular section of the route, the objectors state that they find no rationale for the deviation off the main road, and the principal concerns regarding this link are lack of lighting, the narrowness of the road given that it's used by large tractors, the lack of visibility at the junction of Springfield Road with Culmore Road, and objectors consider that users of the route are unlikely to follow the route down Springfield Road and will continue along Culmore Road. Objectors have suggested that the carriageway on Culmore Road could be narrowed, the footway widened to 2 metres, and they also query whether a habitats regulation assessment was carried out. A road safety audit was carried out and did identify a number of issues with this section of the route as set out by the objectors, and it's acknowledged that this section is not ideal, but it has been considered and developed in conjunction with DFI Roads. This is just the section of the route through into Thornhill College. So this is the section of the route then that continues along Culmore Road, where the footpath actually becomes very narrow at this point. And the objectors had suggested that the carriageway in Culmore Road could be narrowed and the footway widened. And this would be the best solution. However, the reason it can't be delivered is that the road is constrained along this section. As you can see, there's wall on both sides of the road, and there are a number of light standards along the road as well. So DFI Roads have advised that if widened to 2 metres, the actual usable width of the path would still be restricted because of these boundary walls and the lampposts, and it would likely create its own safety concerns, as 2 users passing may force 1 user onto the Culmore Road. Furthermore, the applicants advised that this would require the demolition of a house and acquiring a private front garden, and that there would be an impact on the wall which belongs to the Sisters of Mercy Convent, and that is listed. In respect of the alternative solutions put forward by the objectors, officers must only consider the proposed development as submitted and take the advice of DFI Roads in respect of the acceptability of the proposed route. The applicant advises that the preference would be for an offline section through the existing Sisters of Mercy lands, which, if we look at the map here, would connect basically along a line that led along these lands here, but that's not what's before us today. DFI Roads Traffic Section advised that they have reviewed the representations and they confirm that the applicant's response has sufficiently addressed the representations and it's not considered that further amendments to the route are necessary. Regarding the Habitats Regulation Assessment, this was carried out and assessed by Shared Environmental Services, and SES advised that the proposal will not have an adverse effect on the integrity of any European site. There were concerns raised by an objector along the route here on Culmore Point Road, where they considered that the footpath had been unduly raised in height at this point, but this has been considered and looked at by DFI Roads, and they consider that it's not unduly raised, and the reason, but it is slightly raised, and the reason for that is to allow drainage away from the wall here that's bounding the footpath towards the road. On Coney Road, there was a concern raised by a solicitor representing the owners of this dwelling here at 24 Culmore Road, which is currently vacant. Initial plans had shown requirements to demolish buildings associated with this property, but those plans were amended to show that that would not be required, and the solicitor was advised of that. So this is just a summary of the additional representations received. There were general objections submitted by several objectors, and they've all been addressed and set out in the report before members. So the site visit that took place on the 8th of April, these were the areas that members visited. So they considered the site along Culmore Road at Griffith Park. They looked at the section here at Springfield Road, and you'll note from your late items submitted that I'm just going to go on to those quickly. These were the photographs submitted on behalf of the objectors, basically showing how narrow Springfield Road is and that it would be very difficult for cyclists or pedestrians to have somewhere to pull in if they met a tractor on this section of the route. They also show this image of a tractor with a trailer turning onto Springfield Road, and consider that it's dangerous at this point where the junction is. So I'm just going to go back. These were the other areas visited by site members at the site visit. So there was concern raised that the crossing point here, which is just on the photograph, is just around this point where the lay-by turns in, that there was concern raised just with the provision of that crossing point. Now, this road safety audit that was carried out in respect of the route identifies that there could be an issue at this location. They've considered, the road safety audit considers that visibility is obscured for northbound drivers, that's drivers heading in that direction, because of a large low mounted direction sign, which is just further behind us here actually, and a utility pole. So there's a recommendation in the road safety audit that to improve visibility, that the signage, vegetation and utility pole should be removed and an advance warning sign of the Toucan crossing provided for northbound drivers. The Arden Road was another point that members visited to look at that. And in respect of the issues raised with Springfield Road, this is the advice provided by the Council Greenway team, that signage will be erected and the road lined along these sections. The cycle dismount signs are asking cyclists to dismount, which is acceptable in terms of the guidance documents. The footway width along Culmore Road is still acceptable if people want to dismount and continue along Culmore Road, and they can do so in this manner. With the link along Springfield Road to Thornhill, it allows cyclists an option if they want to get back on their bikes again in a safe manner. So this is just a summary of the planning policy that was considered in assessing the application. The consultation responses are set out in the report and there are no objections. And I just want to advise members that the conditions that are provided in the report, I would, with members, if it's okay with members, just to provide this last, excuse me, I don't know what I did there. This last condition in respect of lighting. just to ensure that it's wildlife friendly, because lighting along sections of route where there's no lighting at present could impact on bat habitat in particular. So just for a bit of consideration for that condition. So approval is recommended subject to the conditions which are set out in the planning report, and with this added condition just in respect of lighting. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Rosie. Members, you will all be familiar with this application, and I know there was quite a lot of discussion in relation to the objectors' concerns and different aspects of the application at last month's committee. I know that the objectors, no objectors have requested speaking rights for this committee, but I've no doubt that any of their concerns will be considered by members as we take a decision. Members, I'm going to invite Jonathan Henderson and Dermot Gibbons to address the committee on behalf of the applicant. So Dermot and Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Going ahead, Jonathan, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. To address some of the critical points that have been raised by some of the objectors, I'll start with the pinch point on the Springfield Road. I think it's important to point out that this pinch point will be localised and will be over a distance of approximately 180 metres. In terms of the proposals, we will be erecting a cyclist dismount sign, as Rosemary has indicated, and that is allowed for within the guidance. We recognise that it's not ideal in terms of provision. A 3 metre wide greenway with a buffer would be the optimal standard. To address this issue, we are seeking to acquire third-party lands to develop an offline section from the Colmore Road up to the Springfield Road and onwards to Thornhill College. But that is subject on securing third-party lands and on a subsequent planning application coming before members as well. In terms of continuing route along the Colmore Road at this point, that is not an option for the applicant. Even if we wanted to achieve a 2.7 metre wide greenway by reducing the carriageway width, DFI have advised that that would not be acceptable to them at this point. Hence, the only option for us is the one I've just aforementioned, to continue offline, but that does not form part of this planning application. In terms of the proposed crossing point on the Colmore Road, we appreciate the concerns raised in terms of the sightlines on approach to the proposed location. The minimum sightline standard to be achieved is 120 metres, and we can achieve that by the erection of additional signage. So we're confident that that can be addressed through appropriate design. In terms of street lighting at Springfield Road, again, that is outside the applicant's control because it is outside the urban settlement limits, and DFI would not permit that section to be lit. So again, within the applicant's control, there is nothing at our disposal whereby we can address that. In terms of the hedge provision at Griffith Park, whilst we can't make any tangible commitments at this stage to put appropriate screening in place to address the residents' concern, we will endeavour to meet the requirements at detailed design stage, i.e. post-planning phase, as we don't have sufficient detailed design at our disposal at this time. In terms of the Alder Road, just to clarify that there will be a 3 metre wide greenway with a buffer from the junction of the Coney and Arden Road connecting Hollybush Primary School to it. I think that addresses the salient points. I'd just like to state that, again, going back to maybe what the crux of the objections have been in this project around the Springfield Road junction, that localised pinch point represents only 2% of the route, less than 200 metres. 98% of the circa 10-kilometre route will be to optimal greenway standard, and will be a fantastic facility for the northwest connecting across the border to Muffin, County Donegal. It's particularly pertinent in light of our response to the COVID pandemic and our emergence from that, as well as in addressing climate change and the response to the climate emergency. So thanks to yourself, Chair, and to committee members for hearing our response.
Thanks, Jonathan. I know there's a question here from Councillor Dobbins. Angela, do you want to come on?
Thank you, Chair, for that. Yeah, it's for the applicants. And Chair, would it be possible if Rosie could put up the crossing up at the Magna Bar that I had highlighted at the last meeting? If you could, thank you, Rosie. Just guys, the crossing where those that have gone on the site meeting, for first and foremost, I want to thank you for doing so. But that crossing across that road, if you see that grey car, it's about 3 meters behind that grey car, right? So you have, now don't forget, we have a secondary school, and we also have young youth from the college who are now cycling to and from school, right? So they're expected, this is where the crossing will be. And it will be an indicated, I was assured it would be an indicated crossing. Okay, there is a very bad, it's a dangerous bend in the road about 20-25 yards behind this designated crossing. If you look further down, past this lay-by, now this lay-by is to allow those cars from them cottages to safely park off the road and therefore allow unrestricted driving, you know, to the north, right? If you look on down, there is a crossing there, a traffic lighted crossing. It would, in my opinion, and I have stated this, it would possibly, if there was a tweak being able to be made there, for that cycle path to go further down to that crossing, those traffic lights will allow cyclists to safely cross that road, not at a bend. We've already had, we've had a youngster, it wasn't a youngster, it was a teenager. We had a teenager actually jump off his bike in the middle of where that designated crossing is planned to be, leave his bike in the middle of the road because there was a car coming. And the statutory miles per hour, speed limit there is 40 miles per hour. There was a car coming around that bend. The young fella thought he was dead, so he jumped off his bike, left his bike in the middle of the road, and ran to safety to the footpath. You know, if this is going to happen on a regular basis, as I say, I'm not putting a hindrance on that. You know, and in fact, I'm quite happy if nobody else has any questions to propose this application, but I do think that there should be a tweak there that maybe would allow a more safer crossing in this one particular area. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Councillor Dobbins, and now isn't the appropriate time for a proposal. But I'm going to offer Dermot or Jonathan an opportunity to come back, because I think it is unfair. This application has been in the making for some time, and as members, the remit of our committee is to deal with the application in front of us. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be able to, it's beyond our remit to make changes to the application at this stage. But I just want to offer Dermot or Jonathan, whichever one of you, opportunity to come on and explain why the crossing is proposed where it is.
Jonathan, do you want me to take it?
Yeah, go ahead, Dermot.
Yeah, in terms of Angela's point and why we hadn't gone to the existing crossing point, for us to do so would require us basically removing all the car parking on the lay-by there for the residents. Therefore, for us to provide the 3 metre greenway along there, we were removing all the car parking. And given that they have no car parking at the minute, we thought this would end up with severe objections from the residents. Hence why we looked at alternatives of where we could safely cross the users onto basically the Clonmore Point Road. In terms of Angela's point of the proposed crossing point being unsafe, the road safety audit are did pick up issues in terms of the visibility at the crossing point. In terms of design standards, we're to provide 120 meters visibility displays, basically as you're traveling along from the centre line of the road, so the cars can see the signal heads. On the left-hand side there, where that grey car is, the cars at the minute will only see about 90 meters. Therefore, as part of our mitigation measures, we will be providing a secondary head on the right-hand side, pointing towards the cars coming towards Derry. Now, we will end up achieving more than 120 meters. I think we can actually end up achieving 150 or 160 meter sight displays. Therefore, we're above standards in terms of visibilities. As well as that, we're in discussions with DFI in terms of coming up with hatching, looking to maybe change the hatching on the carriageway there, change the hatching on the carriageway to try and give the psychological value of narrowing the carriageway and hopefully slowing down cars coming around it, because we do acknowledge that cars are probably coming around there slightly faster than 40 miles an hour. So we are going to try and do some intervention measures as well, with signing and lining as well to reduce it. But we're content as well as DFI, of what we're doing is totally safe and within standards.
Really appreciate that, Dermot. Thank you. And just to summarise for myself, I suppose the crossing at this point will be an improvement of what's there existently, and it applies to, it meets the required standards. Is there any other questions to the applicant?
Chair.
Is that?
Sean, put me.
Go on ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I know there's been statements released by political parties, so maybe people are a bit impatient to just go ahead with this discussion. I know modality is all about trying to get the residents who live in this area to use this pathway, and that is extremely positive. So the idea would be that we would see a lot more people cycling to and from work and around in different directions. So can you just clarify, right? I appreciate that response back in terms of the crossing, because it does cross a number of times, right? And it's acknowledged it's a busy road. So will these be, is it traffic lights that you're going to be using for people to, is that what the proposal is, or is this just markings? Could you just clarify that, because that would be useful. And then the second part is, I don't know if, in terms of the pathway itself, is there any plan to kind of try and put hedging right along that as a kind of buffer in terms of the road, but also to try and deal with exhausts and stuff? Because if you're a child and you're on a small bike on that level, that's exactly the level that the exhausts are hitting. So that's probably something that can be done at another stage in the process. But I'm wondering, has any thought been put into that thus far? Thank you.
Hey, Jonathan or Dermot, does either of you want to pick up on those?
Jonathan, do you want me to pick up again, or?
Yeah, go you with the crossing, Dermot. I'll pick up the vegetation one.
Yeah. In terms of the crossing, Sean, at this here point here, we're providing a signalised crossing point. In terms of the other crossings across, basically run adjacent to the Culmore point or Culmore Road, we're providing basically a 50-50 hump. In the majority of them places, we are giving priority to the cyclists where we have the sufficient visibility within the junction. Now, where we aren't able to basically give priority, we're still providing the 50-50 hump. However, that is coming slightly closer to the junction. By doing so, this will mean basically as cars are coming along the Culmore Road, they'll have to slow down, and it'll be making the facility a lot safer for cyclists than your standard basically crossing point as you'd go anywhere else, uncontrolled crossing point that you'd see in other areas within the city.
Jonathan, do you want to pick up on the vegetation question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In terms of the vegetation, absolutely. We would absolutely desire to plant the majority of the buffer adjacent to the Greenway. However, on the Culmore Road, there's a number of constraints which prevent us from doing so. particularly in terms of sightlines, with the number of private entrances and public entrances along the road. But in the context of the green infrastructure plan, subsequent to this application, we will look at where we can appropriately green, which don't impact on those constraints which I've just mentioned.
Okay. Councillor Harkin, does that?
Thanks, thanks Dermot. Thanks, Jonathan.
Councillor McKinney?
Was Councillor Mellon not in front of me, Chair?
Anyone wants to come in after questions to the applicant?
All right, okay, sorry, Chair. Right, Chair, I just wonder, could Rosie put up the picture that was sent from Mr. Gallagher of the tractor in Springfield Road? No, the one I see down further down the lane past the houses, please. Yeah, this is just really for the two lads there. Look, are you considering trying to take some of the hedgings away there from the left or on the right hand side of the actual lane for if a third party will agree to it? Could you just confirm that, please?
There's been no discussion about that to date, Councillor McKinney, but having said that, we will endeavour to look at that as we get into the detailed design phase.
That's great. It's just it is very tight there. I actually was on the site meeting, and I know the lane's not very busy, but it's we do need you definitely need some form of sort of somewhere to get out of the way of the tractor coming, because it is quite tight there. I met a tractor myself heading out towards Racecourse Road from that road, and lucky enough it was at the crossing point where the golf course crosses, and I was able to get in out of the way and let him by. But it's just in that bit of lane it looks really, really tight. Thank you.
No, that's a fair point. Like we'll look to pick that up at the next phase, as I've said, a detailed design.
No, just there's no more indicated speakers. I just note that Councillor Dobbins has put on a question there around who was it that carried out the traffic impact survey. Or this road safety audit, apologies. Do either Jonathan or Dermot, do you want to pick up on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was RPS consultant who carried out the road safety audit. They were commissioned and they act as an independent body to the overall designer, and basically they would look at the project from a road safety issue and come up with suggested areas for improvement on the audit. And they're basically at that point then we would look, then they would provide us a report, and that report we could then decide whether we accept or reject the recommendations. Now, on terms of accepting or rejecting the recommendation, we have accepted 17 of the 19 recommendations on the project. The 2 rejections on the road safety audit was on the street lighting at Springfield Road, which Jonathan addressed earlier in terms of why we can't do that. And the other one was that they misunderstood the drawings in terms of where they thought we were putting the Greenway in terms of the level, and we're looking to provide us a barrier along Coney Road. However, that was addressed that we were at grade, so we're content there.
Appreciate that clarity, Dermot. Thank you. Yeah. Is there any further questions first? I'm going to move on. Thanks, Dermot. Thanks, Jonathan. I'm going to move on now to questions to the officer, to Rosie. So first indicated was Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Chair. I'll wait until after the questions to the officer. Not buying ahead to any application. I'm just waiting for the points as this has already been discussed. So I'll wait until after. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I suppose it was remiss of me not to challenge Councillor Harkin when he seemed to indicate that this committee hasn't given this application the the merit that it deserves. I think we've discussed this quite at length, and Councillor Harkin's comments in terms of pushing this through are completely unfounded. Councillor Harkin?
Well, Chair, I wasn't talking about the committee. I was talking about reading statements from Sinn Féin in the newspaper and then seeing Sinn Féin reps today looking to come in on not questions, but it looks like just push this on.
Have you got a question to the officer? Have you got a question to the officer?
Well, look, you started a discussion, so I'm responding.
You made an accusation about this committee, and this is and the
No,
business.
I didn't make an accusation about this committee. I didn't say this committee issued a statement. I've said now who issued the statement. So go ahead.
Right. So you came on and said nothing. Is there any further questions to the officer? Okay. Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Chair. Having discussed this application at length in the previous one, and there has been a lot of attention to it, and rightly so. It's a big investment in the area, so any rep that feels that they need to support it is well within their rights to do it, as am I, and this is why I will be proposing the recommendation. They approve this planning application. I do think it's a welcome scheme for the area, great investment in it. And whilst there has been points that the applicant has said herself as not ideal, I do believe the applicant has made every opportunity to mitigate across. I don't believe there's any areas of high safety concern, otherwise they would have been raised in the road safety audit. So I am content to propose the application, Chair. I just want to say that it is enlightening to see that we're encouraging people out of their cars and onto the pathways and the greenways that can promote not only environmental benefits, but benefits to people's health and well-being, particularly in a time where we are trying to get people outdoors to exercise, to promote people's mental health, where they can go out and enjoy the scenery that we are very beneficial or very fortunate to see around our area. So again, welcome the application and I propose a recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Mellon. Councillor Dobbins.
Sorry, Chair, couldn't get the unmute off. Yeah, well, I'm obviously happy to second this application now, especially after hearing the recommendation that was made at our previous meeting and today, and having the benefit of the site meeting, which was poorly attended, but thank you for those who did. And it was a site meeting that all committee members assented to. There was no dissenting voices there. So, and this site meeting was requested for genuine and legitimate concerns that were made by myself and by residents within this community. But again, the site meeting gave me and the members the opportunity to see those concerns and possibly any sort of revision that could be made as plans going forward. I was dismayed, however, that at the weekend to also see reports on social media and other media outlets referring to this application as being hindered by myself by deferring for a site visit. It certainly was no hindrance whatsoever. There was genuine concerns for health and safety that were raised, and it is this committee's duty to take these on board. Site visits offers that opportunity for those who are unfamiliar with the area. So, and I do agree with Councillor Harkin there, Chair. I think it's a bad taste. The press releases have been issued welcoming the approved application before listening to the objectors that had been, that their points weren't raised. So therefore dismissing their valid concerns before they were even considered. But I'm happy to second this. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Just to remind Councillor Dobbins that site visits aren't compulsory, and if members feel that there's enough information contained within the reports, which is a very comprehensive report with with substantial photographs, and it's an area that's familiar to quite a lot of us. I think it's unfair to criticise members for not attending. I think most members feel that I for one attended the site visit, and I don't believe that I benefited from attending the site visit. I believe that there was clearly enough information contained within the report in an area that's very familiar with myself. So I don't believe that I benefited in any way from attending the site visit, but maybe others did. So that opportunity was there for people to attend if they needed to. But I don't think it's fair to call people out because the site visit, attendance at the site visit is only, it isn't compulsory, and it's only to those available to those who feel that they would benefit from it. In hindsight, I don't believe that I did. Councillor Harkin.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, I walked the length of the from Foyle Hospice down to the shopping centre today, and I definitely benefited from looking at all the a number of the areas where there was concerns. So you know, I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that. I feel much more confident now about my position in this, and I'm glad that the most of the recommendations were taken on board. And I think, you know, this is going to be a very important project for the city. This is exactly, for the district, this is exactly what we want to be doing. And I think if if we reach our goal of encouraging people to cycle into the city centre, down to Culmore Country Park, on over the border, on into Donegal, this will be very good. And you know, the idea that this is close to where the residents live, I think is very important. So I'll be supporting this today, and I'm eager to see this move forward as quickly as possible. The other thing that makes me confident as well is that you know, that I had raised it, and it's been raised by many people, about the issue of a possible pathway along the river. And my understanding is that that proposal is not necessarily one that is you know, ruled out as a result of this. That also could be something that is progressed going forward. So you know, on that basis, I'll be happy to support this. And I guess with some of the issues that are still outstanding, if they are, they can be fixed at a further point down the road. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say that I fully support this application as well, and I did benefit from the site visit. You know, it was well explained by Rosie, the problems there on the Culmore Road at that Springfield Road junction. And I'd all just like to say as well, and Hilary alluded to it at the start of this committee meeting, transparency, and I believe we've had full transparency here within this application. And I agree with what Angela said there. You know, everybody's had a chance to have a talk and have a look at it. So I fully support this application. Thank you.
Okay, members, if there's no further comments, we've got a proposal from Councillor Mellon, seconded by Councillor Dobbins, to accept the officer's recommendation to approve. Is there any dissenting voices? No. That application has been approved, and I'm delighted to see so. And that is in no way diminishing the concerns, the genuine concerns that had been raised at last month's committee. And I believe that as a committee, and as a council, we did explore all options to alleviate any of those concerns. And I am delighted, and I want to thank all officers involved in organising the site visit and bringing this back in the committee at within such a short time frame, which ensured that this application wasn't jeopardised in any way. So I just want to thank everyone involved in ensuring that was the case. So members, I'm going to move on now to item number 5, our next application, and it's LA 11 2019-0936. Members, there's been a number of late items in relation to that. It's around 4 letters of support. Members, I'm going to give a minute or two to just ask members to pull those late items up and familiarise themselves with them. And I'll come back in a minute or two and bring Suzanne up. Okay, members, are you content to proceed, or does anybody need more time? Okay. Over to you, Suzanne. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
So this is item 5. It's the erection of a wind turbine of a 55-metre tower with a 52-metre rotor diameter, and it's on land south of 29 Ergon Road, Castledarg, County Tyrone. So members, this first slide just shows you the location map submitted by the application with the proposed site. It's the circular portion of ground here, about 0.3 hectares. Within an agricultural field. It's located in Ergon, just outside Castledarg, beside an adjacent farm complex and the buildings associated with Donegal Rapeseed Oil Company. There's an existing turbine already on the ground in relation to the business as well, about 110 metres north of the existing site. As I said, it's 500 metres northwest of the village of Ergon and 850 metres northeast of Castledarg. This is the site of the turbine here, just when viewed from the actual Ergon Road, from the access. You can see sort of undulating topography. This is an existing anaerobic digester, and this is the start of the buildings and the farm associated with the business. This is an elevational drawing submitted with the application. It just shows you the height of the turbine. So it is a 850 kilowatt, 850 kilowatt turbine V52, and hub height 55 meters, and the rotor diameter 52 meters. That gives a total height of 81 meters, and it's not proposed to derate this wind turbine. All the consultees are satisfactory, as you'll see in section 9 of your report. We did have 2 objections from one property on noise issues, but we worked through with the agent, got those issues resolved through the report, and I'll go through that as well later in the report. There have been 5 application at the end of last week, supporting the application on economic, environmental and social community benefits being outlined. So in terms of the area, you'll be aware from the report that there are a number of existing turbines within the area. There's 5 existing turbines close to the application site, and they're noted there on the map. I'll just go through the turbines and the critical viewpoints together. in terms of the visual assessment that officers have undertaken in relation to this case. So here we have the application site here. This is an existing turbine. Turbine 2, 3, 4 and 5 are all existing, and these viewpoints are short to medium range views that we feel are important in terms of assessing the application. So just generally, the proposed turbine is located in the northern section of Landscape Character Assessment 20, which is an area that is flagged up as high to medium sensitivity on the rising land to the northwest of Ergana, between Ergana and Castlederg. It advises that in considering the location, siting, layout and design of wind energy developments, the flatter undulating hills north and south of Castlederg may have better capacity, and care will be needed to avoid adverse impacts on locally important skylines, especially to the north. I think what's important here is just to note the number of existing turbines that already exist on the ground, both in the localized viewpoints and also in the wider area. So in terms of looking at the critical views, I'll take you through each one. So viewpoint 1 here, the proposed turbine will be visible when approaching the site from the east along Ergana Road. There will also be short to medium views from the turbine from the local road network to the north and northwest. So viewpoint 1 is travelling along the Listymore Road here from the north, and you'll be viewing the turbine with 2 other turbines, turbine 1 and turbine 4, just when you're looking at that. And I'll just take you to the photo for viewpoint 1. Here we go. So the turbine will sit in just a bit of a lower level, but because of the scale of this turbine, the existing turbines at the minute, other than the applicant's own turbine, which is about approximately 59 metres as approved, all the other turbines in the area range from overall heights of around 40 to 45 metres. So this turbine now being proposed is significantly higher than the existing turbines that we have in the area. So from viewpoint 2, from the Listymore Road from the south, the proposal will be visible above the undulating hill and be viewed with the applicant's other operational turbine there, turbine 1. Travelling southeast along Grove Road from viewpoint 3, and you'll see there other turbines are starting to come into play in terms of the critical views. And it'll be intervisible here with at least 3 other turbines, turbines 1, 3 and 4. It will be further away than these 3 turbines and will sit at a lower level, but again, because of the scale of this turbine, it will be evident, it will be visible in the landscape. Probably moving on now to probably the most critical of the critical views. Viewpoint 4 is the first one, and that's the view from Lurganboy Road. So Lurganboy Road, you're actually looking across the landscape to the east, over to the site, and you can see here turbine 3, turbine 4 in the distance, turbine 1, and then on down here. That's another one on further on out of the distance that I haven't actually marked in one of the 5. So you'll see here, and you'll see the wider landscape where we are sort of sitting in the valley there. Then moving on to viewpoint 5, and this is taken from Precessia Road. And this is really, again, I mean, it is a very overcast day, but you can start to pick up again the localized views of the turbines closest, but wider in the landscape. And for anybody who knows the area, when you're looking around those Drumlin Hills, you will see the significant pressure that there has been in terms of wind energy in the area. This is a longer distance view from the Drumquin Road, sort of to the southeast. You're looking back over across, looking at the Drumlin, looking at the landscape. And what we're really trying to show here is that wider landscape pressure that there's been in terms of turbine development. And on the lower area, okay, I appreciate it is in the lower area, but you will be seeing the large scale and height of the turbine being proposed sitting there in the front of the other turbines. So just in terms of the visual, before we move on to the objections, I suppose in terms of looking at the assessment, we have looked at it both individually in terms of the scale and the height,
And we've also had to look at it in terms of a cumulative impact, which are the requirements in the policy test set out in RE1. In your reports, you'll see significant consideration in terms of, the height rising to approximately 81 metres, the scale of the turbine in terms of it being top heavy with a 52-metre rotor diameter. And then in terms of the cumulative impact, where we're looking at just the existing number of turbines, both locally and then in the wider landscape, there's clearly significant pressure in the area. Looking at the objections that have been submitted, so there were 2 objections from the one property raised location or objections in terms of noise. So this is the objector's location here. And what we had looked at in terms of the noise assessment identified that the closest noise sensitive receptor to the site would be 128 Strabane Road, which is noise sensitive receptor 14, which is here, at a distance of approximately 352 metres. And the applicant's own properties at 29 in Ergana Road, noise sensitive receptors 1 and 2, those are financially linked with the proposal, and therefore are able to experience the higher noise limits. So in terms of the report, the property that objected didn't fall within the scope of the noise assessment. It is further away than the 2 dwellings, noise sensitive receptor 13 and 14, which are the closest receptors, but at those levels, the noise levels are acceptable. So the conclusions with our environmental health and the acoustic consultant and ourselves have concluded basically that there'd be no detrimental impact in terms of noise on any of the closest noise sensitive receptors, and that would include the objector's property. In terms of shadow flicker, you'll also note from the report that there was an issue came out of the software and the shadow flicker report for number 11 Dunraven Road. Now, just to clarify, that property was never notified as part of the application. At this property, the worst case scenario projections would show that this property will the shadow flicker limits will be exceeded at this property approximately 30 minutes per day. Again, that's worst case scenario, and it's dependent on a different number of factors such as light intensity, cloud cover, wind direction, wind speed. The real time expectancy would be 7.15 hours per year, which would fall within the recommended limits. So in terms of shadow flicker, things have moved on, I suppose, in terms of shadow flicker and controlling it and managing it. And there is software which can, the applicant has confirmed that their machine would be compatible with the software, which would allow a shut off if an issue of shadow flicker arose. And as officers, we're content that that could be dealt with through a condition. Before I move on to the actual further consideration of the environmental and economic and social issues in terms of biodiversity and nature conservation, just to clarify, the site's on managed grassland and it's not within any bogland. Bat survey and bat monitoring and mitigation plans have been submitted and demonstrate that there's no issue in terms of the local bat population. So clearly we've highlighted that there's issues in terms of the visual impact, and then we are also required to give appropriate weight to environmental, economic and social benefits for any renewable project such as this. So we're aware, obviously, the applicant owns the existing farm complex called Hillside Combined Renewable Systems, and is also operates the Donegal rapeseed oil factory from this location. The complex has an existing anaerobic digester and an existing operational wind turbine, and the applicant has a larger plan for a hydrogen generation power plant for the overall site and another anaerobic digester. Just to clarify, we don't have any planning applications for either of those at the moment. Those plans are financially dependent on the current turbine proposal, and that is at the heart of the case that's been made here in terms of the wider environmental, economic and social benefits. Is that this turbine, in terms of the renewable energy will help contribute to the further expansion of the site. There's only one other hydrogen power plant in Northern Ireland, and the proposals will alleviate issues with ammonia and nitrates, which are currently hindering development. Just in terms of the 5 late items then that you'll have read over just at the start of the meeting, just to go through those in a bit more detail. So we have one from the company, Donegal Rapeseed Company, providing information really on just the renewable energy generated will assist in the production, marketing and expansion of the business, which is an indigenous in Donegal. It's processed at Ergana and is marketed and distributed from Rafo. The marketing product is produced through 100% green energy, and will be dependent on the planned hydrogen plant for Ergana, which will be granted by Invest NI, and subsequently 17 jobs proposed to be created. There's a focus on the sports sector and marketing, and in terms of sport and nutrition range, that should say. And in terms of cross community, there's just information in there in terms of the cross community nature of the business, in terms of supporting the local GA and aerobic clubs in that whole sport nutritional sector. And then there's a partnership with Seed Tech and organic plans to produce organic pelleted fertilizer. Second letter of support there is from Omagh Academicals Rugby Club, and this is a community support benefit that they are advising that the actual business, the proposal, promotes carbon zero sports nutrition brands. We also have a letter from Mervyn Kinlock from Derry Angling Club advising that the project will help prevent nutrient runoff and the health of the river and the ecology. And I think that's really in the wider renewable energy sense of the project. In terms of, we've got local support from Thomas Buchanan MLA, and the letter obviously advises on supporting the plans for the expansion and looking at the vegan protein product being expanded upon, and the organic pellet fertilizer, and helping to reduce the nitrate and ammonia levels. We've also got a letter from Crowley Engineering, just basically a statement on, I suppose, a general sort of desire to reduce carbon emissions and carbon credits, and really putting forward, I suppose, a very general case in terms of renewable energy project in that context. So just in terms of the community benefits, just to advise that, those are obviously voluntary community benefits that have either taken place or proposed to take place outside the planning process, and are probably not material considerations in terms of the SPPS that we could afford any consideration to, but nonetheless it's important to mention them. So in terms of the proposals for the wider expansion that this larger turbine is required for, as I said earlier, we don't have any proposals in the system at the minute. And officers are quite clear that the benefits outlined are not sufficient to outweigh the detrimental impacts that this further turbine would have in the area in terms of the visual amenity and the landscape character of the area, which is already significantly under pressure. So we both have the issues in terms of the individual visual impact, the height, the scale, and then also the cumulative impact, which is purely in relation to the number of existing turbines on the ground that are currently operational. So members, you'll have seen from the report, there is a recommendation to refuse. Officers feel that both the shorter and the longer distance views are significant. That, in addition with height, scale and massing, will contribute to detrimental impact in the character of the area, and something that we really want to now try and control the significant pressure in terms of wind energy. Other turbines in the area we feel are more modest in scale, and again there's an issue here in relation to the scale of this turbine, approximately 81 metres in height, significantly higher than any of the others in the area. And And again, just a concluding comment there about the benefits not being considered. So we've weighed them up appropriately, but we don't feel that they actually merit the detrimental impacts of the development in the visual amenity. So that is the refusal reason, members, within your packs. And I'm happy to take any questions after we hear from the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Can I welcome Alderman Derry closely? Derek, you on the call?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity, and also thank you for taking consideration of a meeting that I have later. Firstly, can I address the planner's conclusion that the proposal would have an unacceptable adverse impact on visual amenity, landscape character, both individually and cumulatively? If this were a single turbine sited on top of a hill, it might be understandable, but the planner has not taken proper cognizance of local topography and the fact that it cannot be viewed as a single turbine. That's mentioned within the presentation, the cumulative nature, but those members of committee who know the location will be well aware that when you're travelling from Castledown to Victoria Bridge, the land to the left rises significantly in a northerly direction towards the Donegal border. The proposal is sited lower in this area than the other turbines, and this, to my mind, and I would suggest, mitigates any skyline impact that has been referred to by the planner. Proper consideration of that topography, to my mind, has not been taken into account, and indeed figures 6 to 12 in the presentation, the viewpoints do not reflect the actual topology as per the rising ground. Further, being associated with the existing turbines, the cumulative nature, if you wish to, the present proposal does not extend the current impact. Rather, it should be considered in planning terms as an infill site, no matter which direction it's viewed from, as can be clearly seen from figures 4 and 5, and indeed, if you take into consideration viewpoints 3, 5, and 7. It is accepted that wind turbines, by their very nature, cannot be hidden away. So planners must consider more than just the visual impact when making their judgments as to what they might recommend, but the final interpretation of the policy lies with this committee. On page 300, 301 of the presentation, reference environmental, economic and social benefits, the planner states that SPPS stipulates that these considerations will be given appropriate weight. I wonder, have they been? Whilst the intentions of the planner says, whilst the intentions of the applicant are clear, officers have no other proposals for the wider complex and benefits of the turbine. Well, members, clearly this is a chicken and egg scenario. The turbine is the foundation on which the overall project hinges, and the agent, no doubt, will amplify this far better than I can. We ourselves as a council are moving forward on addressing issues of climate change emergency, carbon reduction, green energy, environmental impact improvement, etc., and doing so on a cross-border basis. This proposal, taken in its entirety with what will flow from this turbine, is cross-border. It reduces carbon footprint. It creates a renewable energy source with the energy being used on site, produces non-peat organic fertilizer compost, uses ethically sourced and produced materials. And I particularly welcome support from the local angling club. We're all mindful of the disastrous situation that occurred, reference the Meanbog landslip. Now, here you have the local angling club supporting this turbine application. The proposal is aiding farm diversification. Proposals coming down the line via the new climate bill under consideration at Stormont will have a major impact on our agri-food sector, a sector that is of pivotal importance within our wider rural community, and particularly so in the Derry area. The planning policy being used as a reason for refusal is being interpreted on a very narrow base of visual amenity. I urge the committee to examine the wider context of RE1 of PPS 18, wherein significant weight should be applied when the wider environmental, economic and social benefits are included within a proposal for a renewable energy project. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Now can I invite Conor Foy and Andrew Allen to address the committee? These are very welcome, gentlemen. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I want to just confirm or say what Derek Hussey said there was very much in line with what I'm going to say, and he definitely has got the flavour of what this project's about. This project, we feel, hasn't been given the environmental benefits haven't been given the weight they should have been, and that the reason for refusal is a very singular issue, and it hasn't, in terms of the planners say themselves that they haven't given these other applications aren't in, that they aren't giving them due weight. We feel that on the basis of the application, it has a clean bill of health. We do accept that there is a certain visual impact of the turbine, but this is what you get from turbine applications. On the views that the council have outlined, they are mostly cumulative, and as Derek said, they're of an infill nature. The way the undulating landscape works is that at certain distances and angles, the turbine will be seen, but in all likelihood, it will be viewed in a similar vein as the other turbines. This turbine is of a similar nature of others installed throughout Northern Ireland and will fit within the remit of this site. As the council have outlined, it has been approved by Environmental Health, by NIEA. It has no outstanding issues. The 2 objections that were filed against it were assessed, and the Environmental Health Department has adjudicated that this is a non-issue. The rationale behind the application here was on a number of reasons, but primarily it was to do with the need for power and the need for renewable power. If the Allen family wanted to get additional power here, NIE actually could not bring this power to their site. Where do they go from there? They bring in diesel generators, and that takes away from their whole decarbonisation. They're looking here at the bigger picture, differentiating their brands and their products that they're generating currently on site. They have invested significantly to date in these products, and they want to bring them further. But there's the climate bills, the climate charges are all coming down the track, and if they don't keep abreast of the renewable energy that they're using and producing, then they're going to lose out in business, because frequently more businesses are going to look for the green tab, and if they haven't got it, well, they're going to lose out. The businesses at the moment have shown that they're innovative. Dontine and Donegal rapeseed companies are specialists in products in their own right, and they have shown that. The fact the council haven't are saying that there's none of these other applications in the pipeline does a disservice to the Allen family, and the fact that they're going around about their business in the background, generating these products, and in some instances, in fact, the additional facilities that they need or they want to do don't actually need planning permission. So it is, as Councillor Hussey says, a chicken before the egg scenario here, and that in many respects we couldn't submit other applications because we needed to know what the power supply would be. We feel that there hasn't been any credit given for the information that was submitted from the very start of this application. We have submitted on 4 or 5 occasions the rationale behind this application, and again, as I've said before and it's been mentioned, it hasn't been given the weight that it should have been. Planning policy, SPPS and PPS 18 is for applications. It's meant to support renewable energy. This is a non-tariff application. It's not going to receive any subsidy from the government, and it will stand on its 2 feet, because every unit generated by the generator will be used on site. The flip side of that is, if they have to get generators or they have to try and get it off the national grid, they're paying for that, and it's coming from a national grid that's reliant on fossil fuels. So in essence, while trying to have a green initiatives, they're actually using fossil fuel generated electricity on site. There's a do nothing scenario here where the Allen family do nothing and continue in a similar vein as they are at the moment, and all the benefits here won't be done. So instead of improved air quality, instead of nutrients being captured, ammonia being decreased, all these things will actually increase, because people are going to see this weighted argument against their applications and decide ultimately they're not going to pursue it because the credit that should be given under the current policy isn't being implemented.
Excuse me, Mr. Foy, sorry, you're 5 minutes up.
Okay.
So, Mr. Foy, do you want to just...
Can you hear me?
Mr. Allen, you've some 5 minutes between these. So,
hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes. So I'm the applicant. I'm Andy.
Mr. Allen, hello. You said 5 minutes between these, and that time has expired. So, unless members want to ask any questions, and I know Alderman Kerrigan has indicated there. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. I was just looking to just confirm a few points there. I'm trying to make some notes here as the speakers were referring to items there, and maybe Mr. Allen can confirm some details here. From what I'm seeing here, you are seeking to put up the turbine here, but I think your colleague there had just, Mr. Foy, had just maybe touched on it there. This would be a one turbine. It's stated here that you would be using yourselves, as in there's a lot of turbines that are erected up throughout the country, which are realistically, it's the subsidy, the government subsidy, the ROCs payment is their financial benefit, whereby this turbine, if you get approval for it, this will be one that you'll be receiving zero government subsidies, and it'll be entirely at your own cost that you are putting it up. And
that's correct. Yeah. It's off grid. For one, it's non-tariff, so it'll not receive any subsidies. Everything you're saying is bang on. We have a large requirement, shall we say, for renewable green electricity.
Mr. Allen. Yeah. Connor, can you put your mic in mute? There's a lot of feedback. Go on ahead, Andy.
Sorry, as I was saying, there's a large requirement. So to do what we want to do and achieve the ambitions we have that was laid out by Connor and also by Mr. Hussey, require energy. So to make a vegan protein, you require a significant amount of electricity. You also require a significant amount of heat. So for that heat, energy, generally what standard is diesel fueled steam boilers. We want to not do that at all. We want to have hydrogen fueled boilers so that our entire site is completely green. That's our ambition. To do that, we need essentially a one turbine. As I say, that turbine will not be connected to the grid, so the electricity can't go anywhere else other than into our electrolyzer to produce the hydrogen to use on site.
Can you confirm? Sorry, Chair, if you're all right. If I just a couple of wee questions here, if Mr. Allen can sort.
Can you ask all your questions at once?
Yeah, right. Sorry, I will, Chair. Sorry, Chair. You do have an existing turbine, and I take it that's entirely been used with your own. You're using that full supply there. There's not enough with your current turbine that you require the second one. As one question. As follow-up question there, shadow flicker was mentioned, but it seems to have been resolved there. You have a mechanism to there was mention of a potential of a maximum of 30 minutes of shadow flicker a day for a reason for refusal, and I'm assuming there in that regard Suzanne did touch upon it, as you have the technology, have you that can alter that or stop the turbine spinning in regards to the shadow flicker? That's the second question there. And I'm just looking here at a third one right down here. Yes, well, it has been mentioned also in regards to the there's no other proposals in the system. But as you say, is it all dependent on the getting the one turbine to start with, and therefore, as I think Mr. Foy touched upon, it would be going on to diesel generators if you were unable to. And I think that, sorry, the last one, Andy, if you can just confirm to me there, I've been looking there at my old ordnance survey maps there as well, brought them out there. I'd be minded that the location of this site would be substantially lower than your existing turbine. But at the same token, it is substantially higher than travelling along the B72, the main Strabane road. As you travel up from that, I mean, you know that ground, that's your ground anyway. But you know, there's quite a large, there's quite a height as you come up from the Strabane road to your existing height, or to this site, proposed site that you're putting forward, with quite a large number of substantial mature trees and the hedge in there. And I don't expect the trees to cover a turbine, particularly the size of the one, but you would refer to that. And then it's just, there's quite a height difference between this proposed site and your existing turbine. Wouldn't that be correct? Maybe you can give some figures. So I don't know if you're able to answer those couple of wee things, or if you need me to repeat anything.
So I'll start with total power. That was your first question. The total power we have on site currently, so there's an anaerobic digestion facility and a 250 kilowatt wind turbine. That cumulatively is not enough. Currently it's enough for what we're doing at the minute. So at the minute it covers our Donegal rapeseed oil production. It allows it to have an entirely green renewable label, which we market as such. It also has enough to cover the farm and everything we do on site, and the surplus of that is sent to grid. What we're proposing will surpass all of that cumulatively, so there will be nothing to grid to cover what we have at the rapeseed oil facility and the farm, and the addition of what we're planning to do far outweighs that, which is why the planner referenced further anaerobic digestion down the line. So we're an order of magnitude greater of the amount of power we require than the amount of power that we can supply. That also leads into why the turbine that was selected has been selected. So as was noted, it's a V52, it's 850 kilowatts. It's significantly more powerful than the turbine we already have. In terms of efficiency, it's where we feel we need to be. It's as small as we can go without losing economic viability. In terms of shadow flicker, exactly as you said, there is technology readily available, whereby if there's sunlight at a certain time of day on a certain calendar year, the turbine will switch off and turn around so that shadow flicker is eliminated completely. That was part of what was acknowledged, I guess, within the planner's report. Could you repeat what the question was after that?
Was the height, the ground level there between the existing turbines and the new site?
Yeah, so as you can see, I guess on the slide that's shown, I don't know if you can see it or just me, but the river obviously is the lowest point. That's the valley. As you climb towards V5, 6 and 3, you're going up to the top of the hill. So obviously we are slightly above, we are reasonably above the level of the Strabane road, but we're nowhere near the top of that hill. It's not, you know, I've no figures to outline what I'm saying essentially, but my feeling is it's insignificant whenever viewed on the grand scale of the horizon, I guess.
With your permission, Chair, just to amplify for Alderman Kerrigan, viewpoint 4, 5 and 6. Point 4 is on the front.
Alderman Hussey, you've had your opportunity. I can't allow you to come back in again.
I was only answering the question.
Alderman Hussey, I can't. The standing orders don't promote it. Everything from Alderman Kerrigan.
Was there another question in there? I feel like I've only answered 3 and I thought I got 4.
And I thought it was maybe to prevent the to and fro, and I thought it might have been better, more expedient to ask the questions together and might have confused things. Alderman Kerrigan, do you want to come in, and is there anything that hasn't been answered?
I think, to be fair, I think that's tying in, as he's mentioned about why there's no other proposals in the system, and he mentioned the shadow flicker, and we were discussed about the height, and we discussed, well, why he needed the power. So I think, to be fair, I think that's tied them in there, Chair, to be truthful. I think so.
Oh, appreciate it. Thanks, Steve. Is there any further questions to Andy or Connor? No. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Allen and Mr. Foy. Going to move.
Thank you, Chair.
Move on to questions to the officer. Is there any questions for Suzanne? No. Alderman Kerrigan?
It's not necessarily a question, but I would be seeking to maybe make a proposal if that's in order. If no one else has a question.
Thanks for the heads up. Is there anybody that has a question first before I bring Alderman Kerrigan in with a proposal? No. Before I bring Alderman Kerrigan, I'm going to give Suzanne an opportunity. Suzanne, do you want to come on anything that's been said?
Yeah, Chair, yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, you know, in terms of the economic, environmental, social benefits, the, you know, PPS 18 does say significant weight, but that was obviously superseded by the SPPS, which affords appropriate weight. But as officers, we are very cognizant of the importance of renewable energy, and we have given this appropriate weight. We really, really have. And in terms of looking at the actual landscape and the wider landscape, I think anybody who is from the area or who knows the area very, very well will, you know, cannot say that, you know, we have not afforded appropriate weight to renewable energy in that area. You know, again, just reiterating the critical views really up this area of the landscape. Yes, down here, as I did mention, there are undulating topography, but this is the scale of this machine. It's 81 meters, and it's something much more significant on a lower level than what we have seen before. So just in summary, we have appropriately weighted what we feel in terms of the economic considerations that on the evidence that has been submitted to date. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Members, is there any further questions? Any questions at all? No. Alderman Kerrigan?
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to apologise to Suzanne, or maybe does Councillor McGuire want to come on?
About that, Kieran, Councillor McGuire?
Well, Chair, I was going to second the proposal.
Oh, well,
Right.
well, let's see the proposal
Yeah.
first.
Right. Sorry, Chair. Yeah. Sorry. Apologies. Right. Yes, I do note PPS 18 renewable energy. It is the 1.3.18. There are no landscapes into which a wind farm will not introduce a new and distinctive feature. And again, it states that it is important for society at large to accept them as a feature of many areas of the region for the foreseeable future. And again, in 1.3.25, it's stating that wind turbines are tall and often located on open land and highly visible. Now, I'm not trying to say this is not going to be visible, because it is. It's the nature of the beast that we're working with here, Chair. But I would be minded, given the location of this particular site, and given I mean, there's a lot of viewpoints there taken, and I appreciate the report and all the work that Suzanne's put into it. But I would have thought, if you're looking at visual amenity, you're looking at 2 key points there, and that is on the Strabane Road, where you will see it traveling along Strabane Road, and Drumna Bay Road coming along from Spamount. Now, there's no viewpoints from either of those 2 locations. But again, we do know, Chair, that there is an objector, and they raised a noise complaint. But yet I'd be minded that objector resides at viewpoint 2, but they raised a noise complaint, which has been clear that it's all right, but they didn't raise a visual impact. And they would be one of the ones affected by visual impact, but visual impact wasn't a thing that they had raised. I would be minded that, according to the things here, as well as that, it is lower. And my figures here, my ordinate survey map, I'm going back to, I'm thinking it's about 80 metres there above sea level, whereby the current turbine, which is ownership of this farm, is around 100 or 110 metres, I think, above sea level there. That's just very vague, but it's just the case of there's a significant height difference. And again, I understand that this turbine will be a 55-metre tower, whereby the current one, I believe, is a 40-metre tower, because I remember that coming through a previous planning committee. But Chair, so I would be minded that, as well as that, again, I do agree, Suzanne, that the term does state appropriate weight and determining whether planning permission should be granted. But I would be minded that this application has received cross-border and cross-community support. And again, when you have the local communities as well, in regards to support for the rugby clubs, support for the GA clubs, support from Donegal Rapeseed and Crawley Engineering, as well as we do see, as has been mentioned before, I mean, this is not like the wind turbines and the incident which occurred whereby there was the bog slip. This has actually got support from the anglers, and we know the devastation that has been caused there to many of the salmon spawning areas there and the Mournbeg and in the Derry River. So I would be minded that the projects here are beneficial. So on that basis, Chair, and on the lines of that the actual visual impact, there's no quantitative measure to it, I would be minded that we propose that we reject the officer's recommendation to refuse, and that we accept and we support this application, and we approve the construction of the one turbine. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. Councillor Maguire, did you want to come on?
Yeah, Chair, just again to support the application. All's been said. I think we're down to the two first bullet points on RE1 of PPS 18. Cumulative impact, but you know, if you go into landscape area character area 19, which is the one I live in, which is right next door, you know, to this, a couple of miles up the road, you know, you will actually see for real cumulative impact where it does sit up on the countryside. And as has been rightly pointed out, this is kind of on the side of a hill, and the ground sloping behind it. So in my view, I think the need outweighs the cumulative impact here. Just that's on second application.
Okay. Members, is there any further questions? And again, I was going to bring Suzanne in relation to any proposed conditions.
Thank you, Chair. As officers, we would be proposing the standard time conditions, the siting as per the plans, the noise conditions, the shadow flicker management and mitigation condition, and then a condition in terms of the decommissioning removal within the normal timescales. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Kerrigan, are you content as a proposer?
I'm content, Chair.
Okay. Is there any further questions or comments? No. I'm going to take out the vote. So there's a proposal to approve the application in front of us by Alderman Kerrigan, seconded by Councillor Maguire, with subject to the conditions that Suzanne outlined. Is there any dissenting voices? Councillor Gallagher is abstaining. Is there any other contrary view? No, members, I'm going to, with the exception of Councillor Gallagher, that's unanimous, members, so that application has been approved. Members, we've reached the 2-hour mark, so I'm going to propose or suggest we take a 10-minute break. So, or slightly over 10 minutes. It's 7 minutes past 4 at the minute. I'm suggesting we're going to reconvene the meeting at 20 past 4. So I'll see you all then. Okay, members, are we ready to proceed? Members, our next two applications are items 6 and 7, and they're going to be presented together. The information's up on the screen. I'm going to pass over to Malky, who's going to take us through them. Malky, I can't hear you. Can hear you now. Go on ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Items 6 and 7 will be here together. Item 6 is a full application, L11 2021-0036, and L11 2021-0037 is item 7. That's a listed building consent. The both proposals relate to a change of use, refurbishment, remodelling, and extension of existing guardhouse at building number 10 Ebrington Square, and minor elevational works to building 10A Ebrington Square to provide office accommodation, incorporating meeting rooms and associated facilities, principally at building number 10 Ebrington Square. And the recommendation is to approve. The site is shown as outlined in red as on the southern side of the parade ground within Ebrington Square. Again, this will give you an idea in terms of the ortho. It's just near the top corner as you transcend across the square towards Limavady Road. This is quite a useful picture here, which will show the existing building number 10. This is where the principal application is located. It's a change of use of this building, as well as an extension to the rear of it within a gap area, which will adjoin number 10A, but not break through, but there will be some minor elevational changes to 10A. Building 10 is a listed building. It's known as the guardhouse. 10A was known as the jailhouse within Ebrington. Again, this is a more up-to-date photograph showing the elevation along the main access road within Ebrington. The proposed elevations, the existing elevations on the left-hand side will give you an idea of the site as you look from the parade ground, which most people are familiar with. As I alluded to earlier, there's currently a gap between building 10A and building 10. The proposal is to infill this gap with a modern extension and also introduce openings onto the proposed elevations onto the parade ground. Again, this is looking from the other side, from the elevation from where the current offices have been built, along Kings Road side of Ebrington. So again, you'll see that the modern intervention extension, as you'll see from the floor plans. The extension is to building 10A, and it's provide additional areas in terms of a lobby, a reception at ground floor level, and some additional office at first floor level. It will not break through into building 10A, and it will be a standalone building, and the change of use to the rest of the building at ground floor again is to provide office space. The policy to context in relation to this application, again, with the Derry area plan in terms of BE1 and BE2 in terms of listed buildings. This has a grade B2 listed building. Therefore, within SPPS to the relevant policies in relation to listed buildings, as well as the principal policies that set out within PPS 6 in relation to the extension or alteration of a listed building, and also development effect on the setting of a listed building. PPS 6 is also relevant because it's within the context of a scheduled monument at the Star Fort in Ebrington. And PPS 3 is relevant in terms of access, movement and parking to the site. Consultative response: given the scale of the proposal, there's no objections from DFA Roads. Environmental Health have commented on a previous contamination report supplied for the wider Ebrington site. they've given a standard contaminated land condition and working hours condition. I think it's important to note at this stage that there's an error in the report submitted to committee in terms of conditions 4 and 7. These have been entered and were not part of EHD's recommendations, so these will not form part of the decision. NA Water have no objections, and HED Historic Buildings have no objections to proposals subject to conditions. There has been a meeting and numerous discussions about the applications, and the principle of works have been agreed through amended design detail during the process of the application. So in summary, yeah, it's a listed building. It's amongst a number of listed buildings within and around the site. It's introducing a new use. It's going to maintain the upkeep of a listed building for an appropriate use and appropriate interventions in terms of internal alterations and external alterations. There's no impact on the Starford wall, which is a scheduled monument. There's no impact on the wider setting of Ebrington, and the proposed extension is in scale, a mass and conformity with in terms of design also. So therefore, overall, it meets the policy requirements, and the recommendation of officers is to approve the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Maggie. Can I invite Matthew Crothers and Rasheen Donnelly to address the committee? And in doing so, you are very welcome, but can I ask you to address your remarks to both of the applications? And in doing so, I'll allow you an extended period of time. So going ahead, when you're speaking, just refer to both applications because they'll be voted on separately. Thanks. Go ahead.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I think Roisin has had to leave the meeting just to childcare commitments. Unfortunately, it's run on a bit, so I'll just be speaking on behalf of both of us for both applications. Chair and members of the Planning Committee, thank you for affording us the opportunity to address you. I'm Matthew Crothers. I'm a Chartered Town Planner with Tech Planning. We represent the applicant and our agent for the planning application and its associated listed building consent application. We don't want to take up too much of your important time, but wish to make a few summary points just in support of the applications. We're obviously very pleased that Council's Planning Department has recommended approval of both applications, and would like to thank Council's planning officers for their efforts in progressing the applications quickly and efficiently. As set out in the presentation there, the proposed development seeks change of use, refurbishment and extension of the existing grade B2 listed building number 10 as to provide office accommodation for the applicant. The application site is within the central area in the Derry area plan, and it's therefore located in a suitable and acceptable location for office development, a fact that's confirmed by planning history and planning permissions for similar use in this area and the vicinity. Indeed, the principle of change of use building number 10 has previously been accepted given previous planning permissions for changes of use at this location. Given existing permitted office uses found in the surrounding area, the principle of office development does not pose, in our opinion, any issues in land use terms, and such use in a central location is acceptable and in compliance with the Derry area plan and other relevant planning policy guidance and advice. Proposed development is also compatible with the surrounding land uses within the Ebrington site, and in our opinion will assist in providing a diverse range of uses for the overall redevelopment of the area. But regarding the proposed works to the listed building, only minimal internal and external intervention to the existing listed building is proposed through the use of lightweight and reversible stud partitions internally and limited new external openings within the existing walls. These include new openings to the previously modified western elevation in order to allow access between the existing building and the proposed extension. The proposed extension to the western elevation is contemporary and lightweight and an infill between building number 10 and number 10A, and it will facilitate the main entrance to building number 10. The extension is designed to be a modest scale with a limited palette of materials to avoid competing with or impacting upon the group value of the original buildings within and between which it is situated. The architectural style of the extension respects the local architectural character and setting of the existing listed building and its surrounding area. It delivers a bespoke, individual and quality architectural style appropriate to the existing building and this location without detriment to neighbouring development. Historic Environment Division, HED, has been consulted on the design as part of both the planning application and the listed building consent application and is content with the design, offering no objections. Access to the site will be via the existing access off Limb Valley Road, and car parking spaces to facilitate the proposed development will be provided within the surface level car park to the east of the Ebrington site. As the site's located within the city central area, it's in a highly accessible and sustainable location with excellent connectivity to the centre of Derry, both city side and water side, and is readily accessible via a range of transport modes in addition to the private car, such as pedestrian connectivity, bus, train and cycle. To summarise, proposed development seeks the reuse of a listed building along with a modest extension in order to facilitate the proposed office use. Demolition is not proposed, only minor and sympathetic amendments to the building fabric to create limited openings to facilitate access to the proposed modest extension. Proposed development will therefore not impact upon, but will assist and secure the upkeep, preservation and enhancement of the existing listed building. Proposed development is consistent with the Derry Area Plan as well as all relevant planning policy guidance and advice. And when assessed against these, it's acceptable in planning terms, in our view. Given its central location as well as existing and permitted office uses found in the surrounding area, principle of office development on the application site is clearly acceptable in land use terms. Overall, the development will result in sustainable development at this location. Change of use of the building will make a positive contribution to the townscape of the surrounding area as well as the overall redevelopment of the Ebrington site. Just take this opportunity to thank the Planning Committee for the opportunity to speak, and trust that the elected members will agree that planning permission ought to be granted and the building consent granted. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Matthew. Members, any questions? Alderman McClintock.
For letting me in. Thanks, Matthew, for that report. I don't have any issues at all with the application as it's before us. I think it's good to see these buildings being brought into use. Just one question though. We're obviously seeing a lot of office space in and around the Ebrington site, and yes, it is a bugbear of mine and I'd like to see more imaginative use, but nevertheless we are where we are and we do like to see the buildings being developed. Is this a speculative application, or do you have an end user for it? Just I wasn't absolutely sure about that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No, we have an end user. Our applicant, or the applicant for the application, is GLA Surveyors. They're a surveying outfit based in Derry. They include sort of chartered builders, surveyors, development consultants, project managers, things like that, and they're involved in a lot of redevelopment projects, Northern Ireland, Derry, and wider across in Scotland and whatnot. So they're currently looking to move to a new sort of modern office space from their existing one. So they will, it's not speculative, they intend to take up residence in it if planning permission is granted.
Thank you. Councillor Money.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Just like to ask Matthew one point. Just, and I know we mentioned some of the work might be reversible because it has a listed building. I wonder, could you maybe just cover a bit more about that, because obviously some of the features on there would be older, and I'm just wondering if there was any, what would be the reversible aspects of the work that was done, or is updated.
So is this sort of internal work, sorry?
Yeah,
that's
right.
Yeah, I think there were discussions with HED, obviously, on the design and the finishes and internal works, and it's sort of internal walls. I think it's done partition, I think I said, so they could be taken back and you know, could be put back to its original internals if required. Any of the sort of features that the HED had identified within the building, and theirs are being protected as much as possible. I don't think there's any of them that aren't being protected, so we're retaining cornice and things like that, and those will all be kept internally. So it's really, it was any of the good features and the listed features, we're keeping those, trying to protect them, and just add a sort of a bit of a modern aspect to it and bring it up into reuse and be able to be used for modern office use. Hopefully that answers the query.
Yeah, well, thank you, Matthew.
That's great, Chair. Thank you.
Is there any further questions? No. Thank you, Matthew. Moving on now, the questions to Malachy. Is there any comments or questions, members? No. Members, there's a recommendation in front of us to approve. And I'm just, if members are coming in with a proposal, I just want that they remind members or ask members to be mindful that this application is in two parts. There'll be two separate proposals. I'm going to bring Councillor Mooney in first.
Chair, based on what I've heard, I'm happy to propose both applications or the first application based on the officer's recommendation, and the following application if that's permissible as well, based on the officer's recommendations and what I've heard from the applicant as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Alderman McClintock.
Happy to second both applications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further comments before we go to a vote? Okay, so members, we've got a proposal from Councillor Mooney to accept the officer's recommendation to approve, which has been seconded by Alderman McClintock. Is there any dissenting voices? That's unanimous, members. That application has been approved, and whilst approving it, I just want to make a comment in relation to this particular application, because as Alderman McClintock outlined, is that there are other offices type accommodation within Ebrington Square, but there's also very exciting projects in Ebrington Square. And I can remember back not that long ago where this committee approved the hotel development at the Clock Tower, and that application was merged the old existing buildings with it was a mix of a modern development which respected and took into account the historic fabric of the building, the existing building. And I think this application, the application we've just approved, does the same thing in a much smaller scale, but it is in keeping with some of the visions that this committee has and because the officers have undertaken in terms of the other developments within Ebrington Square. So I look forward to seeing not only this application proceed and be developed, but the previous applications that we have approved on this site, because it's great to see some movement at last on the Ebrington site. Members, our next two members, apologies, that vote was for item 6, the LA 11 2020 0036, the change of use and the refurbishment. I'm going to take a vote again for item 7, the listed building consent. Again, it's proposed by Councillor Mooney, seconded by Alderman McClintock. Members, is there any dissenting voices for the listed building consent? Again, that's unanimous, members. So I'm going to move on now to items 8 and 9, and again they're going to be taken together, and it's Malachy that's going to be taking us through them. Go ahead, Malachy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, similar to the last, we'll take these two applications together, 8 and 9, 0568F and 0569 listed building consent LBC. This is for a proposed change of use from former officers' mess to office accommodation, along with internal alterations, addition of lift shaft and flat roof extension. As I say, this is a full application for the change of use and a listed building application for the works to the listed building for building 85 and 85A Ebrington, and the recommendation is to approve. This site is located off the square, the playground, it's known as the officers' mess, shown in the attached site location. The back of it can be seen from the Lamavati Road, but the principal elevation faces towards the west. maybe familiar with this red brick building known as the Officers' Nest on the left-hand side. And this is an elevation from the existing car park that's provided within the Ebrington site. So on the left-hand side, we have the existing elevations. This is a listed building. There's a small number of proposed alterations to the building externally. Most of the alterations are internal alterations. See on the right-hand image here, there's a provision of a new ramp to provide level access to the site. There's the replacement of an existing flat roof extension or hallway between the two buildings with a more modern flat roof connecting building, as shown here on the right-hand side. And then as well, there's an addition of a lift shaft, which is on the rear elevation, shown here on the right-hand side. Most of the alterations are internal, and it's to provide and upgrade the building to allow for modern offices. So similar to the last application, will be removal of some walls, etc., some improvements to provide a modern layout suitable for offices. But as you can see from the proposed floor plans, there's nothing radical or major here. It's a fairly similar floor plan in terms of how you circulate around the building. Very similar policy context in terms of the area plan, in terms of urban design, listed buildings, and the principle of office development. Again, it's within the central area, similar to the last application. And again, the other policy considerations for the full application, the change use would be the PPS-free Derry area plan, and then the listed building consent would be PPS-6 in terms of BH8 extension or alteration of a listed building. So again, we've consulted a number of statutory bodies and other bodies in arriving at our recommendation today. The FI roads have no objections. The applicant has indicated they'll provide 10 spaces within the existing Ebrington car park. There will be, again, excellent connections to the city centre via the Peace Bridge and the Greenway system. So you have connections to the new transport hub on the waterside as well as to the bus centre. And again, there's already sites located off along the Valley Road, so there'll be good bus connections there, and there's also good pedestrian connections. So I don't see that car parking is a be all and end all in terms of this proposal. In terms of environmental health, again, similarly to the last application, a contamination report has been supplied for the wider Ebrington site. This has been taken into account, so there's a standard condition applied. NI Water have no objections. Historic buildings, again, similar to the last application, have been involved utterly during the process and have discussed any amendments with the agent. So they have no objections to the proposal, subject to conditions. There's a small number of internal features that they've asked to be retained as well, which are shown on the drawings, which has been noted during the process of the application. And the site is near the Star Fort in terms of historic monument, but the actual works to the building will have no impact. So in that respect, historic monuments have no objections to the works to the building within the red line. So in summary, again, this is a listed building being brought back into use with a proposed office use. The alterations, both externally and internally, would be minor in nature. It won't have a negative impact on the integrity of the listed building in terms of its appearance or its function or its reasoning for being listed. It won't have any impact on the Star Fort wall, and all design issues have been considered by HED in terms of use. We've also considered it as an acceptable use within the site and the wider context of the city, and direct opposite recommendations to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Malky. Members, there's no speakers in relation to this application, so straight to yourselves. Any questions for Malky? Or any comments? Alderman McClintock.
And at the risk of sounding repetitive, Malachy, is there an end user for this, or is this a speculative development?
Sorry, I don't have that information to hand. No, the applicant is at Ebrington Limited Holdings. They own are involved in a number of the applications within Ebrington. Now, I do know from speaking to the case officer there was funding issue with it, so that would indicate to myself that there is some sort of end user involved. There was an urgency to get this particular application before committee. Alderman.
Okay. Alderman McClintock. Alderman, thank you, Maggie. Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Well, actually, that's an interesting question that Alderman McClintock brings up. Obviously, we haven't got the answer to it, but it's certainly something I think that we would all like to know about, if indeed we can know about it. I have to say, Chair, whilst I'm supportive of this proposal and I'm content to proceed as recommended, and I know this is not Malachy's fault or indeed the planning officer's fault, but sometimes I do consider that buildings like this as office space could perhaps, perhaps that's not the ideal use. I actually know this building, and some years ago a friend of mine was carrying out some remediation work inside it, and I happened to call over and have a look around it. It's a fascinating building. It really is first class quality building, and I just regret that maybe a little more imagination around what this building could have been used for hasn't been applied in this particular instance. But yes, I mean, evidently as well, office space can be useful, and it provides for employment opportunity and jobs and progression of local people and the economy here locally. But we are where we are. I think somebody else has already referenced that in terms of the other building that we've just given planning permission for. But of course, I'm also conscious of the fact that something can obviously then be reconverted back into something else as well. So just to say, Chair, thank you for the report, Malachy. It is, as I said, a fascinating and interesting building to look at. And I look forward to the day when it obviously is occupied as well. But I will propose that we proceed as recommended, Chair.
Okay. Is there any further questions, members? Okay. So Councillor Boyle has proposed, and Alderman McClintock has seconded. And just picking up on Councillor Boyle's point around, I suppose what could be seen as a perceived lack of an imagination. I can understand where those sentiments are coming from, but one of the things that I maybe tend to look at things on the bright side, and I think for far too long, we've seen the buildings in Ebrington Square be sitting unoccupied, and this is a major step. We're starting to see businesses, whatever their nature, have confidence in investing in Ebrington Square and relocating to Ebrington Square, and inevitably that's going to lead to an increased footfall. And along with that, we hope to see the real ambition for Ebrington Square fulfilled. But this is a small step in terms of that direction. So, members, we've got a proposal from Councillor Boyle and seconded by Alderman McClintock in respect to item 8, the change of use application. Is there any dissenting voices? Are all members content? I take that as unanimous, members. Again, I'm going to go back to Councillor Boyle in relation to the list of building consent. Councillor Boyle, are you content to propose that we accept the recommendation for that?
I certainly am, Chair. And just before I do that, I also concur with what you were saying. You're absolutely correct. Too many of the buildings in the Ebrington area have been sitting vacant and derelict for far too long, and of course we should be, welcoming and appreciating that they're coming into use and bringing that level of footfall. I do agree with you. So going forward, I don't want to be churlish about it either, but yeah, I'm content to propose the recommendation for the list of consent as well.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. It's not often we always agree with each other, but again, our Alderman McClintock.
That's Chair.
Yeah, you're coming in to second that. Members, again, proposed by Councillor Boyle, seconded by Alderman McClintock for the list of building consent. Is there any dissenting voices? That's unanimous, members. So that concludes our applications for today. Members, moving on now to item 8, the review of implementation of the Planning Act. I'm going to bring Maura in, and as I alluded to during Chairperson's business, this is in for open for information, but we do require a decision in relation to the Council's response. So I would be keen to hear members' views in relation to the draft response, but also if there's any additional points that members wish to add. And I just highlight the fact that there will be an opportunity if members if they want to email any additional points before the midweek, they can be we can explore. They can be included with the response from council. But I'm going to bring Maura in and give us a brief overview on the points that have been included in the draft response that's presented in front of us today.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is a call for evidence which I've been alluding to for some time now in regard to various aspects of our work, in the committee and off site as well. We've been chatting about this. I've outlined in the report, the basis and the purpose and remit of this particular review, and I'm sure you've read that what I've highlighted is the fact that it's been overdue, and possibly a lots of heads of planning like myself have been asking for this to happen for quite some time, but you can see really where the department's view was on that and why it has taken some more time than what we all would have expected. Over the years, both our council and other councils have raised, things that are teething small problems, but there's also larger problems as well. And I appreciate that, you can see in my report I've outlined that the department's view on this, they don't envisage review to be a fundamental root and branch review of the overall two-tier planning system or the principles behind it. However, they sort of see it more of improvements and fixes, and I've spent a considerable amount of time considering this, and alongside colleagues as well across the councils and at our SPG. But I think it does no harm, members, to also highlight areas that we do think that may need more improvement or a more significant change. And I think this is an opportunity to signal where some of those are. So I'm content to run through kind of the main aspects. I know there's a considerable amount, members. I think I could have put a few more in there too if I had wanted to. I was trying to summarize the key points as so not to I suppose ensure that we focus and the attention of DFI, because I do not wish this opportunity to be missed for all of us. So in terms of development management, members, one of the key things that I have suggested that I've talked to you all about before is about improving the quality of submissions of planning applications. And you yourselves have acknowledged this during the process, that we've actually amended some of our procedures in order to try and highlight an improvement in quality submissions, for instance, in the delegation of some refusal of planning applications. And again, I've shared this elsewhere. But this particular part of the process, it's really, really important that we start improving that, because with other areas where they've seen an improvement in the efficiency of the service, it has been in this area here. I've also highlighted in pre-application discussions as well the idea that, like the PAN process, where before you would submit a major application, that you must go through a pre-application discussion so that the applicant takes into account and takes on board what has been advised before they would move forward into these major submissions. And the other aspect as well I would like to highlight considerably is the area of repeated and revised submissions, along with late information. They're not necessarily always the same, but this committee and just even with delegated applications, this committee has obviously seen its fair share of this type of procedure, whereby we've gone through a process, maybe even 2 or 3 iterations of a layout. We've attempted to review and improve the quality of a layout, for instance, taking on board maybe objectors' concerns, consultees' concerns, members' concerns, etc., and then only to be asked repeatedly to keep reviewing layouts, and all within the same fee and the same planning application reference number. So you can see my detailing around that, and I do believe that that's a key issue, and it wouldn't take a lot for those changes to be considered. Again, on its own, late information, the whole idea, that's even more complex to try and deal with, but you can see that I've still highlighted it. I made some suggestions in and around the ROI legislation and talking to my colleague, Ewan Quinn, in terms of how things work in Donegal. So I've been working on that, and I have been sharing that with DFI in the short term. So in terms of also in development management, what we've picked out ourselves was the issues in and around the PDHs. You'll recall the frustration quite a few times where we've already had a PDH. For whatever reason, depending on the decision of the committee, we've maybe had to go to notification to DFI. And on those occasions, the DFI, because they were required in legislation to come back and ask us to repeat that process and do another PDH, it was always very frustrating for members and all parties involved. And I think that is nugatory. So we're looking for flexibility there. And you can see also I've highlighted things about notice of opinion and DFI, again, from some of our own experiences here. In terms of local development plan, to be honest, one of the major concerns is delay. And you can see the areas that we've highlighted where we think that delay is particularly extreme, and it's in and around the repeated stages and repeated consultation exercises and the lack of clarity in the legislation, whereby on quite a few occasions we've been required to maybe go and check things out. So you can see the detail there, members, and I would be interested in hearing your views on that, because we haven't chatted about that in the recent past, but we will be able to talk about it more at the LDP round tables. But for this exercise, I would like feedback this week. Other areas I have put in here, members, as well, and you will have heard me talk about it at length, which is the whole thing about performance management targets. You will have heard me chat about the idea of intermediate targets that would be more akin to, the past targets, that would be, I suppose, more fairer, in my view, in terms of how they're viewing certain performances around the province, and whereby the likes of ourselves with a high urban input, these types of applications would be a better reflection, that we're not comparing like a single extension to a development for 49 houses, for instance, in the same target benchmark. So that's one of my concerns there. And because the legislation was so inflexible that according to DFI, they couldn't consider that. So that's one of my suggestions. I've also thrown into the position, again, probably outside the remit of this review, but might do no harm in signalling the consideration of the debate to be renewed of third-party appeals. Again, I'd be interested to hear what members think of that. In terms of enforcement, I have highlighted the general consensus that there is a need for a review of the maximum fines, you know, across the enforcement process. And in particular, in terms of the breach condition notice, that particular mechanism we have found very difficult with such, you know, a low fine on it. And we need a fine in order to make that tool effective. The other thing, and we have discussed this, I'm sure, on some occasions, again, possibly in committee or in confidential, in regard to the injunction function. We as councils have the injunction function, but when powers were transferred, even though DFI have a role and do have powers and take applications like regional significant applications, they don't have still the power to serve injunctions. And we think this dual approach is necessary given our experience. And also the department should have their own powers to enforce against their own decisions as well, which is another issue. But members, that's just a whistle stop through some very fundamental issues and quite a lot. So, I mean, I could talk for hours on this, and I'm sure you are aware of it. But look, I would really appreciate some feedback. And again, as the chair has said, more than happy to discuss particular issues offline as well. If anyone wants to contact me or send me an email. And the only thing, we have a deadline, which is for Friday, but we'd be more than happy to combine any of those views. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Maura. Councillor Boyd.
Thanks, Chair. Maura, thanks for the report. Made for interesting reading. Most of it I do actually agree with. I share, I'm sure we all do, share quite a number of the frustrations that you've highlighted there, particularly the elements of it that had delayed or held up or the LDP process and made it slow and laborious and quite cumbersome at times. And I share the frustrations, and perhaps those suggestions might be addressed, and we might be able to move things forward at a better pace than has been in the past. And I understand, obviously, there's so much detail that has to be considered, but we've all been involved in that process for a long time, Chair, as you yourself know. I'm also very pleased to see that you've referenced the matter of late items and how late items could have a deadline attached. Because again, that has been a bugbear of many members in this committee for a significant length of time, and if that were addressed, it might perhaps make everybody's job a little bit easier, and perhaps then allow us to carry through our own planning committee meeting in a more timely fashion. The only thing I would have some reservation about, Maura, would be the reference that you've made to council applications and the level of oversight that might be required by the department. I really don't see that actually as something that would be beneficial. I think it's important, you know, I'm happy to hear back from you on this, but I think it's important. Again, we had this today. There's a very, very good example of it today with the Greenway project, and we'll probably have much more of that stuff as well. I think it depends on what kind of applications you're talking about. And I know you've referenced there, you know, council-owned land and stuff like that. With the Greenway project, some of the land was council-owned, some of it wasn't, and all of that. And I think, you know, you can see the outworkings of that it was important to actually hear the voices of local people and listen to their concerns. And, you know, I'm not going to rehearse that all again, but, you know, I think I would be reticent about taking away any of that element of it. But again, I'd be interested to hear back from you. I mean, as I said, pretty much everything else you've got on there, I'm content with. But that one makes me a little bit uneasy, I suppose is the best way of putting it. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Boyle, Maura, do you want to come back on that comment?
Yeah, no problem. No, that's good to hear that. And I suppose what I would say, Councillor Boyle, is what my thinking around that was some senior officers, not just in the planning department, but across the council. I'm thinking more in the lines of not the likes of Colmore, Greenway, and those types of applications. Completely agree with you. More than right that we would manage those types of cases. I'm thinking more on the line of maybe cases whereby we have maybe a full interest in the land, or there might be in regard to some cases whereby it's a function that's outside our normal remit, and it might be seen to be slightly different, and it's just the optics around that, whereby, and I wouldn't be assuming that the discretion would be there to offer the case up only maybe through discussion with members or something. There was a mechanism there under some circumstances, but it's only thoughts here at this stage, Councillor Boyle. I'm more than happy to consider how I would word that if we were ever retaining that within the draft response.
Come back on briefly, Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I get you, Maura, and so I suppose in a sense what you're probably referencing is, say for example, and this is one we're absolutely determined to do. We build a brand new leisure complex down at Templemore. That's the kind of thing I think you're probably referencing, is it?
Not really, because I think that's within a normal remit of council, those type of facilities. But say, for instance, if it was something that was particularly, on a border area and on a European site, and maybe something outside the normal function, that council would normally be working towards, at this point, I'm not sure what that might be, but I think it's whereby it's not our normal role, and it would be difficult for planning officers to be considering that possibly. But I will take it on board and have some conversations further with some of our senior officers here as well, Councillor Boyle.
I just think more maybe finesse it. Needs a bit more finesse around it. I think you recognise that. That's where I was. That's where I was getting a little bit worried. It probably just needs that level of extra detail, perhaps. Thanks, Chris.
Alderman McConaughey.
I find myself actually having noted exactly the same 2 points as Councillor Boyle, so I don't really want to rehearse them too much. But even having listened, Maura, to your comments there, back to John, I mean, I'm still pretty firmly of the opinion that decisions are best made locally, and I think it would need to be exceptional circumstances where I would think that the decision would be best made elsewhere. And I suppose it's difficult without knowing exactly just what you're thinking there. But I mean, my view really is that decisions should be made locally, because we are the people who best know our own area and don't want anything imposed on us. On the other point, and John has already referenced that and probably said all that needs to be said, late information, it is absolutely our bugbear. And I think actually not just our bugbear at having to read it, because that's not really the difficulty. The difficulty is sometimes I think then that I worry that we are inclined to give more weight to the late information than to maybe other objections that are on the planning portal for some time. So I just detest getting late information and numerous bits of late information at the last minute. I think if an applicant can't get the information in timely fashion, then they shouldn't be trying to rush it in at the last minute. But I don't want to labour it, because John has made the point as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Alderman McConaughey. Any further comments, members?
Can I come in?
Yeah, Councillor Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks to Maura for that report and for the assessment in terms of the draft response to the the review of the legislation. I suppose there's a few things there. I definitely agree with the LDP response as contained, and agree with the fines in terms of enforcement. They currently are no deterrent at all. Also welcome the quarry and mining reference in that response, and agree in the removal of regionally significant designations. I think, I don't know whether there's a scope within that response maybe to reference the permitted development rights that currently exist for mining and mineral, where there hasn't been a planning application submitted. And I think that's something that causes me a bit of concern still, particularly in relation to the ability of that to undermine our new LDP. So I would wonder, is there scope to maybe include that at that point? In terms of part 3, the question 3, the second response there, which deals with major applications, I do have an issue with, and I appreciate it's probably contained in there, but I think it needs to be maybe made more clear that I have an issue around the appropriateness of the use of outline planning applications for major applications. And I think it's picked up there in terms of the lack of detail that's usually contained within an outline planning application where it is a major application. But I think I would go further and actually question the appropriateness of the use of outline planning application procedure for a major application. I think you really do need all of that information at day dot when an application is submitted for a major application. And I think back over the last 5-6 years that planning has been with council, and I'm just the amount of time that officers have spent going back and forward on significant applications which are in outline format, where the information hasn't been provided, and it's just a waste of officers' time. A huge amount of time is wasted because of the system that allows them to come in as a sort of a speculative an option at that stage. And I think we need to kind of maybe hammer that a little bit more in that response. Just yeah, just if there's scope to do that at that point. I'm not concerned, but I'm curious more around the third party right of appeal, because is there a sense around from the head of planning that objectors to a planning application are not being heard under the current? Because I think we do give significant weight to people who do object or have concerns in relation to an application. So I'm wondering around the insertion of that in this response. Not concerned, I'm just curious. Yeah, and also in relation to the permitted development rights, those development rights for minerals were brought into legislation back in the 90s, and that's long before the TELUS project did the radar survey of the ground. So I think those are completely out of date, and I think they should be, to be honest with you, I think they should be binned. But at the very least, they need reformed. So thanks for that, Chair.
Dan, Maura, do you want to pick up the notes?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you for that, Dan. I think for sure we can definitely raise the suggestion that we would review the PD rights in regarding the mining and mineral remit. I think it's a really good idea what I know that we've touched on it in the response and around, I suppose, pads and trying to improve the quality of submissions. But your idea to query the principle of having outline applications for majors is getting even increasingly more difficult as consultees are requiring more and more information before they can determine whether we need EIAs and maybe even TIAs or whatever the case may be. So I think that's a good idea that we expand upon that, and that's no problem at all. In terms of third party appeal, I suppose what my thinking there is to suggest that there is a general feeling that we've reached a point in terms of comparing ourselves as a jurisdiction to other jurisdictions. There is a very sort of high litigious extent of in terms of planning in comparison to other areas, and also a lot of planning issues going to the ombudsman, and the consideration you know, at a higher level, you know, across Northern Ireland, sometimes, you know, a third party appeal would take away from the extent that some of this is happening. May be wrong, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I have a strong view either way, but what I do think is that there's a timeliness in terms of definitely reviewing it again. It was discussed at length before transfer, and it was decided at that time it wouldn't be appropriate for Northern Ireland to have third party appeals. But I do think it's timely to consider it again and debate it. And I maybe could term it in that way, Chair, if that's what members wanted, or simply remove it if we think it's too early to be considering that.
Okay, Councillor Kelly, do you want to come back on?
Yeah, thanks, Maura, for that. It's clarified that point. No, I've no desire to see it removed. Yeah, but maybe just reframe the language, because I wasn't sure when I read it whether what was the point. But I see, yeah, it's a higher point than just the determination of applications locally. It's a more strategic point. So that, yeah, that's good. The debate will be useful.
Okay. Any further comments, members? Are members content? And I suppose I'm going to pick up on a point that was made earlier, that this isn't a fundamental review of the Planning Act, but I think it would be remiss of us not to take the opportunity to highlight a concern that's been raised within this council, not necessarily raised within the Planning Committee, and it's in respect to unadopted roads and private streets. And I know we have had a working group, and we've had discussions with the EFI officials, and one of the objectives we were looking at or asked to explore was there any avenue through the planning system that there would be some recourse for developers if they walked away from developments and left them unfinished. And I know it's a massive issue right across our council area, and I know you've seen the frustrations. We heard the frustrations from all members of the working group, but also officers within the EFI, and the EFI have highlighted that there's nothing within legislation that would allow that recourse to be taken against those who fail to meet their obligations in terms of the building developments to the appropriate standard. So I would be keen, and I know it's not a fundamental review, and it's probably not. It's not the key. This mightn't be the right place for it to come on, but I think it would be remiss if we let the opportunity go without raising it as a concern as part of the review of implementation of the Planning Act, and say that we note that we note the concern, and that there isn't a mechanism within planning to ensure they have some sort of level of accountability for those who fail to meet their obligations.
No problem, Chair. I'll get some wording and incorporate that in the DM section or the enforcement section.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further comments, members?
Just a quick question. Did Maura say this had to be in by Friday? Yeah.
Yeah. I know we did. We sought an extension before, and our extension is until Friday. So
I did actually see the original date. I think was last month, wasn't it? 15th of March or something like that. That's grand.
So if there's any further points, we don't have. I was reluctant to mention Friday because I don't want people like, you know, you want to give officers a bit of time to formulate the response and get it done by Friday. So I would suggest to close end of business Wednesday at the very least, to give officers the time to include any additional responses. But I'm going to need members if for the draft response that's in front of us today, and incorporating the points that have been made by members. I'm going to need a proposer.
I propose it, Chair.
Councillor Boyle proposed.
Yeah.
Second, Chair.
Councillor Kelly seconded. Is there any further comments, or take that as unanimous, members? Okay. So that draft response has been accepted with the additional points, and I'm just remind members that there's opportunity before the end of the day on Wednesday to feed in any additional points. Maura, do you want to come on any of that?
Just thank you. Appreciate the feedback, members, and I'll redraft it and circulate whatever we finally pull together before we send it off on the deadline. But more than happy to take things, and by Wednesday that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, members. Item 9, the planning appeals update, and item 10, the list of decisions issued, are open for information. If there's any, Alderman Kerrigan.
Chair, I was just wondering in relation to item 9. There's 3 new applications stated there put forward for appeals, and in relation to LA 11 2016 0342 F, and then 2020 A 0158 Leitrim Hill Quarry. You know, just querying in regards to that, you know, is that something that's been kicking about from 2016 that we're only dealing with now in 2020, or maybe is that something that we should deal with officers in relation to? It's just, I'm just wondering. I'm looking at that query, Chair, and it's just, as I say, I'm just wondering what the situation is in regard to that's now put forward to an appeal, because I don't recall that ever coming up before the committee.
I can maybe clarify that. Yeah. So, Councillor Kerrigan, yes, this application has been in for a while, but this is an appeal on an environmental impact assessment determination that we have done on the file. So what we have assessed is basically that this application should be accompanied by an environmental statement because of information and assessments that have emerged. And so that determination has a right of appeal. And that will now be heard by the Planned Appeals Commission before the application progresses any further.
Thank you, Chair. If I just come back to that, Suzanne, thank you very much. I'm just querying then, is that so? It's the application hasn't been dealt with because Council now are of the opinion, or the Plan Department are of the opinion, that it requires the environmental impact assessment, whereby that was not provided by the applicant to start with. Where I'm from my understanding, and has that decision come now, or why is it taken from 2016 to now to get that, to come up with that conclusion that this environmental impact assessment is required?
Yeah, so the application, yes, has not been determined. In terms of the details, I mean, I don't have the exact details in front of me. I don't know, maybe I know Rosie's dealing with the case if she maybe wants to come in, but basically information has, you know, and considerations have taken place that have led us to consider, look, this proposal does warrant or does require an environmental statement, which is all the large scale information that's required in terms of determining this before we move forward. And we've a duty under the EIA regs to look at that. I don't know, Rosie, maybe if you want to come in on the details on the case.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, it's we have a duty under what the regulations in the EIA to not approve any application which should have been accompanied by or should be accompanied by an environmental impact assessment. And having considered the requirements of our consultees against the identified risks to the environment, we considered that an EIA is required. So as Susanna set out, the applicant has exercised their rights to take this determination to appeal. So the Planning Appeals Commission will they'll convene a hearing in respect of our findings, and that'll be discussed, and the PAC will come back with a recommendation as to the requirement or otherwise for an EIA.
Alderman Kerrigan.
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. Much appreciated there. I just have a slight concern that it's taken so long to have come up with the decision that we require, that in council's opinion, that we require the environmental impact assessment. I mean, I'm just wondering how long would that usually take when an application is submitted to then council officials deeming that it's appropriate that one's required, and why it's taken 4 years in this application. I just have a wee concern, because I do see that the applicant has put it forward that they're taking it to the appeals, but it's just I don't know, is there a potential, you don't know the appeals, but just would be feared that it would go against us.
Just like Councillor Kerrigan, I don't have the exact details. I mean, Rosie's obviously outlined it's you know, this could happen probably at any stage in an application. And it's something as complex as minerals and quarrying. It's really important that we you know, when we consider it necessary, that we put that forward. The time frame should not be a determining factor by the PAC. They might note it, but I mean, it's not a determinant factor. And you know, if we have an evidence-based case, you know, we wouldn't have made a positive environmental EIA determination if we didn't think it was necessary. It's very unusual that at some stage a minerals or quarrying application would not be accompanied by an environmental statement at some stage. So yes, it's taken a long time, but it's not unusual.
And I suppose the decision they go to the PAC is something that's outside of our control, and it's the applicant's right to do so. So yeah, we just have to see how that process pans out. Is there any further comments in relation to the items 9 and 10? So can I take those as read? And can I ask for a proposer that we go on to confidential?
I oppose that, Chair, John.
Okay, thanks, John. I'm going to wait for confirmation from